for cards. We'll call it special for cards from the public. Next item, please.
Item 3 is a public convenience and necessity item in Council District 13, and the recommendation is to grant the application.
Okay, I'll go ahead and move approval of that. If we can please prepare the roll and tabulate the vote.
11 ayes.
That is approved as well. Next item.
Items 4 through 15 are items for which public hearings have been held. On item 10, there is a request to send that matter back to the ITGA committee.
Okay. Any objection to sending that back? Yes, Ms. Hahn?
Not an objection, but
Okay.
I'm calling 15 for Councilmember Cardenas.
Okay. 15 for Mr. Cardenas.
And, Mr. President, on item 12, there is a request to continue that matter to December 1st.
Okay, if there's no objection, we'll continue that till the 1st. Mr. Parks?
Yes. Thank you, Mr. President. I'd ask Herb, we'd like to send 9 back to the Senate to Budget and Finance because those operational plans are going to be dealt with by the CAO in a larger context. Okay. We'd like to move 9 to Budget and Finance so that on those operational plans.
We'll go ahead and move Budget and Finance number 9. Are there specials, colleagues? Yes, Mr. Labange?
In the 5th District, they want to continue that item the week on the Century Plaza. Is that what I hear right?
I'm sorry, on which item?
Item 13, but I don't see a representative from the 5th here.
We
can I
are
check with
expecting
the
Mr.
audit?
Koretz. He's
Check
not
with the
here
office?
yet. That is correct, though.
That is correct.
Yep.
So I move we continue it if that's correct.
Okay.
Thank you.
1 week, that will take us to the 3rd of November. Without objection, we'll continue item number 13 to the 3rd of November. All right? Are there specials, colleagues? If not, let's go ahead then on
Mr.
the...
President, items 4, 5, and 6 are ordinances. There should be 12 members. Do you wish to hold those?
Yes, while we're waiting Mr. Koretz to arrive, we'll hold those items for 12 members. So let's take up the balance besides those. Please open the roll, close the roll, and tabulate the vote.
11 ayes.
Those are approved.
Forthwith on 8.
8 will send forthwith without objection. Next items, please.
Items 16 through 26 are items for which public hearings have not been held. 10 votes are required for consideration.
Okay, if there's no objection to consideration, we'll take those before us. Are there cards from the public on any of those?
Yes, Mr. President. There are cards on 19, 20, 22, and 26.
Okay. We'll open and close the other public hearings. Mr. Weezer?
26 special?
Not yet, but, from cards from the public, but we'll put your name down as well.
Yes.
Other specials, colleagues? I believe number 21 is linked with number 15, so we'll do that for Mr. Cardenas. And if there are no other specials, let's take up the balance. I think that's 16 through 18 and 23 through 25. Please prepare the roll and tabulate the vote.
11 ayes.
Okay, those are approved. That will take us to our general public comment right now. Our first speaker is in Van Nuys, Sean Murphy. Good morning, sir. You have 2 minutes to address the council.
Good morning, Mr. President, City Council. How are you this morning? I want to talk about the new hiring of the police chief. I hope we get a good police chief. L.A. needs a good police chief. We don't need another Daryl Gates. Please do not have another Daryl Gates. William Bratton was a good police chief. I told a few officers a few weeks ago I like William Bratton. He was a good man. I hope we have another police chief that's good. Another police chief that's good. Also, I want to talk about the MTA. Stop limiting the bus lines. One line's going to be cut. 156. I'm against that. Please do not cut any more lines. People need that line. I need the line too. I take the bus to St. Charles. One more thing. 2 candidates for CD2 is going to be on the radio between now and Friday. Thank you. KRLA.
Thank you. Before the next speaker, we do have 12 members. If we can take up 4 through 6, the ordinances. If we can please open the roll on 4, 5, and 6, close the roll, and tabulate the vote.
12 ayes.
Those are approved. Our next speaker is Michael Hunt, who's here in council chambers. He'll be followed by Kim Neverman.
Good morning, good morning. Today I'm very happy. Matt Dow can speak. Michael Hunt out of the chambers. I'm back at work. and all the nonsense is over with. Pay up your bill, pay up your $500,000, and you won't see us no more. But anyways, since Matt Dow get to speak, I'm very happy about that. Stop wasting money trying to find a new chief of police. The next one in succession is Chief McDonald by right. We had an outsider last time. It's Chief McDonald's job. Anyways, on that note, man, I don't have to come down here for another 30 days. Matt Dow gets us to speak. Mr. Garcetti, you listened to what was reasoned. I thank you for that. And you guys have a next safe 30 days.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Kim Neverman. After that, we'll go back to Van Nuys and Bruce Darien will follow.
Morning, Mr. Garcetti and Council.
Good morning.
I come to speak in terms of the proposed ordinance that's going to regulate the medical marijuana dispensaries. I have a little problem with the section of maintenance of records on page 7. I really don't feel that it is the business of LAPD to have access to our addresses, phone numbers, and if I'm to interpret where it says medical status, I do not believe it is LAPD's business to know why we receive the medication, because there's a thing called patient-doctor privilege. Now, I could see letting the health department have that access, but not LAPD. It's none of their business where we live, our phone numbers, and why we receive it. And I'd rather see, like I said, the health department have access to it. That's a more appropriate agency. If you're going to keep it medical, they're the ones that should have it, not the police department. And as far, because you can't really trust LAPD. They have did some search warrants on some collectives. Who's to say that all of the medicine that they seized was truly accounted for? I wonder how much was given away to their friends, their families, confidential informants. Who's to guarantee that what is seized is true and accurate? How much of that medicine and money is missing? There has to be a way so that if they do search warrants, that they can be held accountable. Everything should be inventoried and checked against the records of the dispensary to know that if the day comes that dispensary will get their medicine and money back, they're getting what was supposedly took, not what they make up. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Neverman. Bruce Darien is next in Van Nuys. After that will be Arnold Sachs back here in council chambers. Good morning.
Yes, City Council members, last week I was speaking about the assassination of President John F. Kennedy. I was admonished by your city council president that I was not on topic with the Los Angeles issue. I referred the council to the assassination of Robert Francis Kennedy. I know one of your council members has said that he's worked for Attorney General and Senator Robert F. Kennedy. I believe that at time now, with the information that's been declassified, that the time has come now that this council take action if it is not going to acquiesce and participate in the cover-up that's gone on for the last 41 years, and request that the county district attorney open the case back up and find out who the additional killers are at the Ambassador Hotel. If you're going to have a school that has the Pledge of Allegiance and the flag flying the flag at the school at the site of where Robert F. Kennedy was assassinated, you better be sure that people are not going to believe what you say and that there's equality and justice for all in America when you cover up something of that historic magnitude. Robert F. Kennedy was assassinated by more than one person, and it's time now that the city open up the case. There is no statute of limitations. This must be done. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Next speaker is Arnold Sachs. After that is Donna Pearman back in Van Nuys. Mr. Sachs is here in council chambers.
Good morning. Thank you. Arnold Sachs. Another fiasco put on by the City Council. Today's Daily Breeze. Booze become boo-hoos. because the Beacon House, a nonprofit organization, didn't have the required permit they needed to put on a haunted house. After putting on a show for 25 years in a row, they lacked the permit. But AEG, bend over. Okay. Expected billboard ban is sign of real progress from the Daily Breeze. Billboard ban initiated by the City Council on August 17th before your vacation time. Let's see. AEG, LA Live, LA Arena Land Company. Who was vetted? Who was vested? Who was going to go to jail? Oh, Tim Lewicki was going to go to jail. The city attorney threatened him. So are you saying that the city attorneys, the prosecuting attorneys in crimes, should not threaten people in jail or accused rapists, accused killers with going to jail because, hey, you can't negotiate with a bully? Maybe they should use this as a negotiating tool, that if you don't confess to the crime, you'll have to sit and listen to city council yammer for 3 hours straight. That would get people jumping off of rooftops. Temporary billboard ban on billboards and super graphics. Mr. Rosendahl, you do have a dog in the fight. Mr. Wesson.
If you could address the council as a whole, please.
I'm addressing remarks they made in the city council chambers, sir. Jan Perry hired an attorney? Weren't you just having a hearing regarding Wendy Gruhl hiring attorney? Where was Mr. City Attorney to negotiate with conflict resolution attorneys? Are we on the foot for that bill too? What
Thank
a
you, Mr. Sachs.
fiasco. And
Donna
Tim
Pearman is
Lewicki?
our next speaker in Van Nuys.
Hello, Mr. Garcetti.
Thank you, sir. Donna Pearman is our next speaker in Van Nuys. Good morning.
Yeah, good morning. I want to warn the public about something that animal services and people should be looking into. Vets that are euthanasia happy. Don't care about older pets, don't do preventive medicine for older pets. One place even psychologically abused Miriam Fogler. These vets can really fool you knowing how to be nice to pull you in, but not enough to give you the information you need to take care of your pet. Animals are just as important as people. City Council, you're not liked. I mentioned your name. When it's not indifference, it's an animosity. Woman felt Council 12 didn't care about her. You care about the CRA developers, DWP, who makes 20% higher than all the rest of the city employees. We need to get more money from digital billboards, marijuana dispensaries. We don't need to attack them. We need to get revenue from them, and LAPD doesn't need private information from them. This is like anything else when people get medicine from doctors. Anyway, we need to fix the buses. The line 156, that one's from Van Nuys Boulevard down to Chandler. And no other buses go that way. The buses in Westwood run very poorly in the morning. And when we go over to the village, over to Westwood, sometimes I have to wait 15 minutes. It's a terrible bus. And the bus is running past Wilshire and Westwood going to Santa Monica. A lot of times I'll see about four buses, and when I finally find one and I'm getting late to work, it doesn't run as often as it should. We need to fix over on the buses. We need to worry about the city employees. We don't need to take away from the city employees. We need to find ways to really save money and ways where in the city council you waste the money. That's the area where you need to go. We need to stop giving money to the CRA, and then we wouldn't have to have these furloughs. And I know these libraries are going downhill because they don't have the money. Thank you.
Thank you, Donna. Our next speaker is Walter Bechtel. After that is Dr. Clyde Williams.
Good morning. I wanted to continue on a little bit with what I was saying about LAPD, since they're going to be voting today about which chief they had to put in there. I don't want to retract anything I said on Wednesday or Friday, because the assistant chief is in charge of printing and making sure the public is aware of the fact there's going to be a meeting, and nobody that I know, in fact, nobody attended that public meeting to voice their comment about which things they know about the 13 candidates that were running or vying for the the duty or the job of the chief of police. So I had something else I wanted to say here about another officer. I think I'm going to save that, though. But over at Newton Division, I mean, last year, this officer with the initials RH, I noticed on the internet, everybody thinks this guy is a black guy, but he's not. He was a white officer, and he was able to win his case against the city, but for $3.5 million, because he said that his superior officers were racist. I notice, I have information that that's common for this particular officer to do whenever somebody accuses him of something, and I don't see why he should have won the case, except for I notice, after reading this article by CBS here, they state that after the case was won, your prosecutor walked up to him and his attorney and his co-counsel and shook hands with him outside of the courtroom after the verdict. So if you'd like to appeal the case, I've got information that would help you win the case if you want to appeal that. Thank you.
Dr. Clyde Williams is our last speaker for general public comment. Sorry, Dr. Williams, your card was misfiled in a different area. Good morning.
Thank you. Dr. Clyde Williams, 4115 Barrett Road, El Sereno. State Route 710 North Extension Tunnel. Caltrans has finally circulated their geotechnical study report, but it's with a changed scope. It also points out that the most probable route, or most practical route, would be to Verdugo and Eagle Rock Boulevard in Zone 2, above Councilman Garcetti's office in Eagle Rock Boulevard. So we're waiting on the resolution. Last night, the Arroyo Seco Neighborhood Council voted to oppose Zones 1 and 2. They're waiting for the resolution from Councilman Garcetti, Reyes, and Huizar. LA 32 reviewed the resolution and sent it back for a one-word change. So far, it's been 3 weeks to get a one-word change. So we're still considering it at the next neighborhood council meeting. So where are we going? State Route 710 North Extension is a real project. MTA has put it on their priority list for the long-range transportation plan. They've also put it into their public-private partnership priority list. They also have re-estimated it, not 3-point-something. Now it's $5.8 billion, which is still one half of that of SCAG's. So we're kind of concerned in that now the environmental process will start this year. And MTA scheduled it to be completed before 2015. So we're trying to figure out, where does the city of Los Angeles stand? Because both the council and the Board of Public Works don't seem to be interested. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Williams. Michael Carrion is our next speaker. We have 3 other public speaker cards. And then after that will be Avra Lopez. Is Michael Carrion? The audience? Mr. Carrion going once? Going twice? Okay. Is Avra Lopez here? Avra Lopez? She's coming. Okay. We have a handheld mic, too, for translation that we'll get to, that we can... Okay. Yeah. Buenos días. Por favor.
Buenos días, mi nombre es Aura López. Soy ex trabajadora de Best Way Car Wash.
¿De cuál car wash?
Best Way Car Wash.
Good morning, my name is Ms. Lopez and I am a worker at the
Best Way Car Wash.
Best Way Car Wash.
En el cual trabajé por 2 años y medio.
I worked at the car wash for 2.5 years.
Trabajando con explotación y robo de horas de salario.
I worked there with a lot of exploitation, and they were stealing the hours that we worked, and they did not pay us the salary for those hours that we worked.
Trabajando 10 horas diarias, por lo cual nos pagaban solo 8 horas.
We worked 10 hours daily, and we only got paid for 8 hours.
El patrón ahí no nos daba derecho a tomar agua ni derecho de breaks.
The boss there did not allow us to take a break, to even to drink water, nor to take a regular break.
Y nos estaba insultando verbalmente a todos los compañeros.
And he would verbally abuse and insult all of us.
El motivo de nosotros el día de hoy de estar aquí es para pedirle a los concejales de que apoyen la propuesta que se va a meter el día de hoy.
The reason why we're here is to ask all your, the Honorable Council members to please approve the resolution that is before you today.
Y que apoyen a todas las personas como nosotros.
And also to ask you to please support all the people like us.
Gracias por oír la voz de todos los trabajadores explotados como nosotros.
Thank you for listening to the voices of all the workers who are exploited, such as us. Thank you.
Gracias, señor Lopez. Alfredo Bautista, and then I believe Mr. Carrion is here. He was talking to the council member.
Sí, por favor. ¿Ya? Buenos días, mi nombre es Alfredo Bautista.
Good morning, my name is Alfredo Bautista.
Este día estoy aquí presente para poder decirles a ustedes la petición que más traemos.
We're here today because we are asking you to please support the petition that we bring before you.
He trabajado durante 14 años en este país.
I have worked for 14 years in this country.
He sido robado de mi salario 3 veces.
I have been robbed for my salary 3 times.
Ojalá que esta ley pueda ser de gran ayuda para nosotros y la puedan aprobar.
I hope that this ordinance can be approved by you because it will be of great help to all of us.
Ya que pienso que este es un delito que nosotros como trabajadores seamos robados de nuestro salario.
And I believe this is a crime because as workers we are not getting paid our salaries.
Actualmente tenemos un caso que no ha sido resuelto. En los 3 casos que me han robado es el único donde estamos trabajando para poder ver si nos logran pagar lo que nos robaron.
I have been robbed of my salary 3 times by different employers, and out of the 3 cases, this is one of the cases that's being investigated in the hopes that I can get restitution or back pay for the salary that has not been paid to me and is owed to me.
Actualmente estamos 85 a 107 trabajadores que estamos llevando un caso.
Currently, we're a total of 85 to 107 workers who have joined in filing a case.
Lo empezamos en el año 2000 y hasta hoy día no hemos tenido ninguna respuesta.
The case was filed in the year 2000, and to date, we still do not have a resolution.
Perdón, me equivoqué, en el año 2007.
No, I apologize. The case was filed in the year 2007.
Esperamos sea oída nuestra voz. Gracias.
And I hope that you hear our voices. Thank you.
Thank you. Muchas gracias. Michael Carrion is our next speaker for general public comment. Good morning.
Good morning. My name is Michael Carrion. Once again, I'm here to complain about the yard in Mr. Reyes' district that still hasn't been cleaned. Mr. Alicon spoke the other day on TV about how the community suffers when the movie studios come in. They take over, they got generators running 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, streets blocked, lights on. Well, the property in question is owned by the city, and it's blight. It looks like garbage, and they leave it like that. I came here, I advised Mr. Reyes of it before I got here. He still chooses to do nothing about it. Yet he puts out a flyer that says quality of life is being disturbed when you have debris on the sidewalks. 2 months, gentlemen, ladies and gentlemen, I've been here. He still hasn't done anything about it. The city still continues to rent this property out. Mr. Cardenas stated that I have no right telling them that their staff works so hard. Why has this not been done? Can anybody here ask me? I can tell you why. It goes to a conversation I heard last year with the sitting city attorney. Mr. Cardenas and Mr. Alarcon were having a conversation, and the city attorney stuck his 2 cents into it and made a comment. Give me the numbers, give me a few days, and I'll give you the answer you want. Now you know why you're in the wreck you are within AGI? One attorney says one thing, a year later a different attorney says another thing, because they're attorneys. Give them something, ask them what you want of them, and they'll give you the numbers you want. It's just a shame that somebody has to come here over and over and over to ask for the same thing. I think Ms. Perry put it right at the beginning. Male chauvinist pigs. I take it one step further, Ms. Perry. Stubborn Mexicans are at charge for this. Oh yeah, you did, and you agreed to it.
All right, that will close our general public comment for today. If we can take up item number 2, we are just closing the public hearing today, and Mr. Zine said the folks that are here were all in support and were waiving the speaking period. We're not voting on it today, but I did want to enter their names into the record, and then Mr. Zine, if you want to say anything. Thomas DeFoya, Gregory Armstead, Mary Patterson, and Ronald Clary. Thank you very much for being here. We'll make sure that that's part of the record, all in support. Mr. Zine?
Yeah, I just want to thank the folks from Canoga Park, All-American City, for being here, for supporting this bid for Canoga Park, the All-American City, the only community in the city of Los Angeles, All-American City. Canoga Park, thank you for coming out today. Thanks for being here.
All right. Go Canoga Park. With that, we will close the public hearing. The vote will be tomorrow, Mr. Clerk, is that right?
That is correct.
We'll take the official vote tomorrow, and thank you all for your presence and for being here. If we can take up the next item, and if we can marry that with item number 21, that's 15 and 21. And Mr. Cardenas, we have cards on these items. Did you want me to? Sorry, Mr. Cardenas? Did you want to take the cards first? Do you want to say some opening comments first? Okay. All right. We'll take the cards then first on these items. We have first the for side, and then we have some cards for the against side, and then we have one general comment as well. So if we could have Dave Gerard come forward, please, first, from Google, and then Jeff Huber as well. Good morning.
Good morning. My name is Dave Gerard, and I'm president of Google Enterprise, and thank you for the opportunity to be here. I'd like to explain why Google is the right partner to provide the city's next-generation email and collaboration platform. Gmail is the most advanced email platform in the world. It's available in more than 50 languages and is renowned for speed, simplicity, and unmatched ability to let users find any email message in just a few seconds. With tens of millions of consumers and 20 million business and education users, Gmail is far and away the fastest growing email solution in the world. In the last year, more than 2 million businesses have adopted Google Apps. In the last year alone, global companies such as Genentech, Motorola, Konica Minolta, GE Plastics, Jaguar Land Rover, and a million more have decided to move their employees to Google. Google Apps is also the market leader in higher education, where thousands of schools have adopted it. Right here in Greater Los Angeles, USC, Pepperdine, and Loyola Marymount have chosen the world's most advanced email service. For more than 6 years, Google Enterprise, the division I lead, has reliably served hundreds of government institutions. We have solutions in every federal cabinet agency, in all branches of the U.S. military and intelligence community. Our cloud services are also used by the District of Columbia, New Mexico's Attorney General's Office, the City of Seattle, and the State of Pennsylvania. If I can leave you with one message today, it would be this. You have the full commitment of Google to make this project a shining success for the city. I've attended all the council meetings at which this project was discussed, and my presence here today, as well as my colleagues Jeff's, is a small reflection of our dedication to ensure this project saves you money, makes your employees more productive, and makes your information more secure. It's a very rare opportunity to get more for less. So thank you for your time.
Thank you for your comments. Jeff Huber is our next speaker. After that will be Tom Anderson. Good morning.
Good morning. My name is Jeff Huber, and I'm Senior Vice President of Engineering and member of the Executive Operating Committee at Google. Thank you for the opportunity to speak with you this morning. I'm here because I want to assure you that at all levels of our company, Google is committed to providing a secure, reliable email service to the City of Los Angeles. Google protects personal data for...
Sorry, if you could just pause for a second. If I can ask the Sergeants at Arms and folks that are behind the ropes here, if we can move conversations, please, behind council chambers or outside, or keep them to a bare minimum so we can hear the public speakers as they speak. Thank you. Sorry, go ahead.
Google protects personal data for hundreds of millions of our users, including our own employees. So we invest hundreds of millions of dollars each year in people, process, and technology to make sure data is protected. Google employs one of the largest and most talented security operations teams in the world. The security organization of more than 100 engineers includes some of the world's foremost experts in information security, including external threat detection and prevention, software coding standards, encryption, and data storage and destruction. In contrast, most cities employ few, if any, full-time security specialists. Google's data centers are extraordinarily secure. In addition to 24/7 guards, electronic key access, and closed-circuit video, they employ state-of-the-art security mechanisms such as biometrics and heat sensing. Also, in a Google data center, your data isn't stored on a single computer. Instead, it is obfuscated, then digitally shredded, then spread across hundreds of different computers, making physical theft virtually impossible. In addition, data is encrypted in transit, ensuring data is safely delivered. In comparison to the city's arrangement today, where every email is stored in a few dozen centers in a single known location, we firmly believe that your data will be safer in Google facilities. As my colleague Dave Gerard has highlighted, Google has demonstrated unprecedented ability to deliver fast, reliable, and secure services to enterprises around the world. We hope we have the opportunity to do the same for the City of Los Angeles. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. Tom Anderson is our next speaker. After that is John Fullenwider. Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you very much for the opportunity to address you today. My name is Tom Anderson. I am the president of CSC's Civil Division. I'm responsible for work that would be done here in L.A. Like you heard from Dave, I have been present and involved in the majority of the activities associated with this procurement here. A little bit about CSC. We are the prime contractor in this case. We are 95,000 people in 92 countries. We do a lot of work for a variety of different clients, especially supporting these kinds of applications. We have been working very closely with the City of LA on this opportunity since its inception, and believe that you have made the right choice in selecting the CSC Google solution. Because we are independent of any of the manufacturers, we are able to provide you a view of all competing solutions, and we selected one that we thought was absolutely best for this opportunity. We think we have an excellent team. Dave Barber, our proposed program manager, is here in the audience with us. He is someone who has done this type of work before and has an excellent track record in delivering solutions for our corporation. As a senior executive for our company, you have my support that this program will work as we have proposed it to you. Thank you very much for the opportunity to address you today.
Thank you very much, sir. John Fullenwider is our next speaker. He will be followed by our first speaker on the against side, Ron Markozich. Good morning.
Good morning. Mr. President, members of the council, thank you for the opportunity to speak before you this morning. Prior to my recent retirement, I was the Chief Information Officer for the County of Los Angeles for 11 years, and prior to that, I was the Chief Information Officer for the County of San Diego for 10 years. The item before you represents a bold initiative that's going to require leadership and an absolute commitment. I've known your Information Technology Agency director for almost 2 years now. And Randy is clearly a woman of vision and commitment to public service. The item, while I have certainly read a significant amount of the what I would call the fear, uncertainty, and doubt aspects, really is not a leap of faith in terms of a technology initiative. But what this will do for the city is it will fundamentally change the way the city provisions services. It will provide an improved degree of access by city employees, as well as allowing them a better opportunity to improve the delivery of public-centric services to your constituents. This is the right solution at the right time. I would encourage you to support it. I recently attended a MESAC conference where I was the keynote speaker, and that is the Information Technology Association for all cities in the state of California. I can assure you they're watching this very seriously. They themselves are interested in pursuing a similar direction. The leadership that Los Angeles is going to show today will certainly allow other municipalities that may not be as large, but certainly have the same keen interest in terms of providing success and services to their constituents, an opportunity to fundamentally change the way they provision services. I recommend your approval today. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Ron Markozich is our next speaker. He'll be followed by Brian Hervey. Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you for the time. My name is Ron Markozich. I'm the Corporate Vice President at Microsoft, responsible for our cloud services for our commercial and public sector customers. We've had cloud services in market out of beta for greater than 2 years at Microsoft, and I wanted to come and express a couple of clarifications. First, there's a lot of reference to Microsoft Office in the response. To be clear, the city is licensed on Microsoft Office, and from what we've seen, it's the intention to keep Microsoft Office. And so Microsoft Office really should not be a factor in this decision because you already own that software. Secondly, I want to be clear on the RFP. The initial RFP was focused at much more than just email. Most of the discussions now have strictly to do with email. It's a very important decision that you're making because you would be the first large public sector customer to move to the email solution that you're considering now. You've heard lots of names. Those customers have not moved all of their employees in either government or private sector to the email solution that you are considering. So it needs to be a very thoughtful decision. The RFP that was released focused on a broad set of services, not just email. In that RFP, Microsoft responded in compliance with the RFP with that broad set of services that included email, Office, and about 5 other applications. If you were to just look at email, the Microsoft solution we have an offer in market that's actually 1/2 of the price of the solution that you're considering today. And so it's important to know that going forward, you're voting on a decision that's now focused on email, but all of the responses in the contract have been looking at something much broader than just email, and we do feel Microsoft has the most secure private solution with customers like Nokia, GlaxoSmithKline, and Coca-Cola Enterprises as customers of our cloud services.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate your comments this morning. Brian Hervey is our next speaker. After that is Kent Erickson. Good morning.
Good morning. Brian Hervey. I'm the client executive for Novell, the account manager who's been covering the city from a Novell standpoint for over 10 years. We very much value the relationship and partnership that we have with the City of Los Angeles. We hope to continue to do business on the email side with the City of Los Angeles. We have a very strong offering with respect to the concerns that have been raised about the cost of upgrading the current GroupWise email system. I want to point out that the Los Angeles Police Department, with 13,000 users, 45% of the 30,000 city users, has already upgraded their back end to GroupWise 8 with minimal effort, minimal resources, and they utilize less than 2 full-time employees to run that system. So it's very efficient when it's implemented properly and can be of value with the new features and functionality that are available today. In addition, the Los Angeles Police Department has not yet consolidated all their entire back end, so there are even greater opportunities for consolidation and efficiencies that can be reached. I thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir. Our next speaker is John Simpson. I'm sorry, I announced you, sir. I think I gave the card away. What was Mr. Clerk, did I give you 2 cards? Yeah, come forward. Just restate your name again. I'm sorry.
Kent Erickson?
Yeah, Brian Hervey. So,
Brian Irby, then Kent Erickson.
yeah, please, Mr. Erickson. And then Mr. Simpson, you'll follow right after. Thanks.
Thank you. Council, President Garcetti, and members of the Council, thank you for this opportunity to speak. My name is Kent Erickson. I'm a Senior Vice President and General Manager for Novell. I wish to take a moment to express my thanks for the City of Los Angeles and your business over these many, many years. We understand that this relationship requires diligent effort, and as such, in March, we submitted a reduced-cost alternative in a letter to ITA that continues to provide the City with a robust and secure email system. Currently, the City of Los Angeles does not reflect the most modern GroupWise version nor the most cost-effective architecture. The City is currently running GroupWise 7, when GroupWise 8 has been available for over a year. The City has paid for and is entitled to the most current GroupWise release, version 8. With the move to version 8, which will answer the concerns raised by City staff using version 7, the City's email system can be easily upgraded and re-architected to provide greater savings and efficiencies. Through centralization, reduced labor costs, systems costs, and others, we can reduce this by 75% and significantly lower the risks of the project. The cost assumptions for staying with GroupWise discussed in the CAO report dated October 26th assume an antiquated email system architecture. A centralized system will be able to reduce the number of servers from about 90 to a couple of dozen or fewer, and can be run by fewer than with approximately 2 to 4 employees, thus reducing the cost for staying with GroupWise and upgrading to version 8. A 5-year comparison of the cost may not be the most appropriate point of comparison. To that extent, Novell is also prepared to help the City in this migration and effort by providing consulting services, architectural and design services to a value of approximately $375,000. This makes it clear that our position with the customer is to help you upgrade at no additional cost, provide the resources to help you reorganize and re-architect your system. I thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Mr. Erickson. John Simpson is our next speaker. After that will be Maya Zettler.
Good morning, Mr. President, council members. I'm John Simpson with Consumer Watchdog. I feel a little bit trapped between the giants of Google and Microsoft, both of whom I think have had somewhat moderately despicable campaigns and a lot of lobbying in this whole thing, and have really avoided the heart of the issue, which is, are you getting the best program for the city? Cloud computing is probably going to be the thing of the future. The problem right now is we're not ready yet. It's not there. Google is talking about its government cloud as a solution. When it's finally built, when it's finally vetted, when it finally gets the appropriate security checks, that might be the solution. It does not exist yet. It is a gleam in Google's eye. The second thing is the way that language sort of gets spun about all of what's going on here. Google would have had you believe that Washington, D.C. is a primary user. Look at your own report from the CAO. It turns out that they don't have a comparable use. It's not analogous. Finally, if something this big is going to be asked of the city, there ought to be a provision for liquidated damages if something goes awry. Right now, as I read the contract, unless it's been amended, Google's only obligation, if there's a security breach, is to send the city an email. Now, they can come and say it's the highest priority and so on and so forth. Make them put their money where their mouth is. If there is a security breach, they need to be held accountable. You need to insist that that goes in the contract. Again, as I see it now, there is no provision for liquidated damages. There was not in the contract that was before the Budget and Finance Committee. So, yes, this may be the thing of the future. It's not ready yet. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Maya Zettler is our next speaker. After that is Matt Dowd. Good morning.
Thank you. Good morning, council members. I'm Maya Zettler from VICA, Valley Industry and Commerce Association. VICA has not yet taken a position on this issue. However, with any major contracting in the city, we ask that several concerns be looked at, namely, number 1, clarity on the cost to taxpayers in the city of Los Angeles. Number 2, accountability. 3, feasibility. 4, concerns of security and privacy regarding sensitive data requirements within the city. It is imperative that a more thorough and detailed analysis be conducted before any major overhaul of how the city does business. I thank you in advance for looking into these serious concerns before any decision is made. Thank you.
Thank you. Our last speaker is Matt Dowd on the 4 side.
Yes, thank you, Matt Dowd. It's good to be here. I want to be in favor of this one only because it sounds like transparency, and it's going to be going across to the LAPD. So, yeah, the digital age, thank you, Google. I want a big shout out to all these guys who invented Google, put it up there, digitized all the emails so we can see exactly what you said, and we can just pull it up in a second and go, yeah, there it is. Thank you. It's the greatest thing. They brought YouTube. We were having me and Zumadog up on YouTube, and they bought that. They're ahead of the curve. Way ahead of the curve. And you know it, Mr. Alarcon. Is that a violation?
You know the rules to please address the council as a whole. Thank you very much, Mr. Dowd. That will close our public hearing. Mr. Cardenas is our first speaker.
Thank you very much. What you're witnessing today is the culmination of a handful of hearings of the City Council and a whole lot of work on behalf of the ITA department, the CLA, the CAO, and a whole lot of other good people who've been trying to figure out what we should be doing when it comes to the culmination of this RFP process. But one thing that I want to remind everybody about is that the people who use this system are the tens of thousands of workers of the City of Los Angeles and the various departments, and it does also include the fire department, the police department. But what we have today is we have been experiencing a system in our offices and through every department throughout the city of a lot of computer crashes and a lot of unexpected problems that have been delaying our ability to be effective and efficient as a city. So with that, I'd like to start off by asking the Information Technology Department Head, Randy, if you could go ahead and bring us up to speed as succinctly as you can as to where we've been through this process, when did it start, how many people bid it, what was the finalist list, and then how you came up with your recommendation. And rather than go through the different scenarios of what the initial estimated costs were, what have you, let's talk about where we all are today, and then we can have the CLA and the CAO concur or not with your today's recommendations and your estimates as to the cost factors, the cost potential savings, etc. Okay? My time. Thank you.
Okay. I'm going to start with my opening comments. Honorable council members, thank you for taking your valuable time and hopefully approve the Computer Science Corporation and Google contract for a new citywide email program. This is a challenging undertaking for all of us, and I want to thank you and your staff for your work, time, and patience you've put into understanding this solution that we are recommending to address the city's upcoming technology challenges. Speaking for my entire team, we know you all have been strenuously informed by numerous parties, and you have received all kinds of differing information, some of which is accurate and some of which could be potentially inaccurate. We also want to acknowledge the concerns that have been raised, and we believe we have addressed these. Some people might suggest to you that the CSC Google solution is new and untested technology. Actually, it has been tested, used for years in many forms, and endorsed by a number of major public sector institutions and private sector corporations. So it is more than a way of the future, it is actually a way of the present. Another important point here is the federal government recently announced their desire to move towards this technology by providing 2 different contract vehicles to all federal departments to use. This technology is used by over 100 million consumers every day. We trust it with our banking information, credit information, personal emails, calendars, pictures, and many other types of sensitive data. And the new CSC Google email system provides a level of security that surpasses these in a number of important ways. Number one, let's respond to some of the lobbying efforts. Let's acknowledge that there are several major technology players who have a lot to gain or a lot to lose by the decision you are about to make. Most of us here have been contacted by these players and have received additional information and documents after the city announced that CSC Google was our recommendation in the RFP process. Fair process. Regarding our RFP process, I have participated in 50 to 60 RFPs in the past 25 years, and this one is the most extensive, thorough, and fair evaluation process I've been involved with. This multi-department process, including major stakeholders such as police, fire, and public works, began over 1 year ago, starting with the city attorney reviewing and approving the methodology prior to us releasing an RFP. The city attorney has been involved in this process every step of the way. Our ITA test has no vested interest in seeing anything other than the best technology solutions while also saving the city money. Security. One early concern had been that the email system did not provide adequate security for our police department. In response, the CSC Google people have worked very hard to develop a technology solution to meet the Department of Justice requirements, which are the highest level of security requirements, as well as the LAPD requirements. The LAPD has worked in concert with CSC Google, the Department of Justice, and our department to create an even more secure environment. As a result, the LAPD as well as the DOJ now support this initiative. Taking the next step in our technological evolution is a change that creates opportunity. Several of you have told us in ITA that you are not happy about the reduction in man and women power we've been allocating to your offices. I want to apologize for this reduced support due to our reduced human resources in this economic environment, and what I would like you to consider today is that LA City government's problems are not going to be solved simply by throwing more bodies at technology needs, which is what staying with the current system or applying Band-Aids to it will do. We will solve these problems with prudent investment in superior and proven technologies, and that is what our team believes we're bringing to you today at this council session. We recommend you approve moving to the city's email system and office products to Google with Computer Science Corporation as our implementation partner. According to the CAO's report, the system saves us approximately $5.5 million over the next 5 years, and it gives us many more important and necessary tools to our current email system. Our other options are, number one, to do nothing. Number two, to upgrade the current email system at a cost of $700,000 above and beyond running the current email system and office system, or go out to another RFP. Why we should act today. The best option, which saves us money and gives us the tools to handle future challenges, is the CSC Google option. Doing nothing is not a viable option because the current email system has some technical and security problems that need to be remedied, some at a significant cost. Applying Band-Aids to our current system is more costly and is an example of trying to fix something that's too broken to repair adequately. And going out to another RFP will take a large amount of time while the current system continues to degrade. We are here to answer any questions that you have. I think the one question I did not answer that you asked me, Councilman, was how many people responded to the RFP, and we had 15 different bidders that responded to the RFP.
Good. How long have we had our current system that we're using today?
7 years.
7 years. Okay. Has a lot of technology changed in the last 7 years?
Absolutely.
Okay. The current system, when it comes to, say we have security matters or what have you, what are patches and what do they have to do with security or changes?
Patches are related to security. They usually come after the fact when a hacker has tried to hack into somebody's system or a vulnerability has been identified, and a software vendor will usually release a patch, and then we usually have to go apply the patch. So it consumes resources.
So in our current system, have we had any patches in the last 12 months that were needed to be utilized to correct our current system, especially when it comes to security?
Yes, we have.
Okay. And does that usually happen? We call them on a Friday, or we notify them that we have a security problem, and on Monday they have it fixed, or does it happen a little slower than that?
Depending on the vulnerability, it could take us a week, it could take us a day. It just depends on what has happened with that particular situation.
Okay. When it comes to security as well, did the LA Police Department, for example, did they have some concerns, or Department of Justice have some concerns as to whether or not, if we went to a cloud system, whether or not we could keep the security requirements whole within our city? And if they did have some concerns, have those concerns been looked into and or fixed?
Yes, when we started the process, there were a significant amount of security concerns, particularly around LAPD and data that goes to the Department of Justice. We believe that those security concerns have been addressed, and I believe that the LAPD is here today, their CIO, because they are now in agreement that the security is going to be proper for their requirements.
Okay. So what was the opinion of the Department of Justice?
The Department of Justice gave us their approval based on what we have told them and what Google has told them. And so we have their approval. What we don't have, just to be very clear, is that we do not have them bless a system that has not been built yet in the GovCloud environment. But the technical specifications are there, and they have given us their assurance that they will bless this particular security.
If we follow those responsibilities.
Absolutely.
Correct. And is one of those responsibilities as to who at the particular system has access to that touchy information?
That is correct.
Okay. So that has been clarified, and that has been understood by the potential provider of this system, and they have actually clarified that they will meet that standard?
Yes, they have.
Okay. One of the things that I think it's important for people to understand is when it comes to the current system that we have versus cloud system, which is the one that you're recommending that we approve, what is one of the basic differences when it comes to either personnel, data storage, and or the cost for us to actually maintain that data storage and the current system of servers and things of that nature?
We currently store all of the data for the email on site on our own email servers, which we have approximately 90 of them, some of which are outdated, many of which are outdated actually. I'm sorry, I didn't get to write down all your questions.
Now, when it comes to the storage and maintaining of it and the current system versus a cloud system, can you give us some examples of the differences when it comes to whether or not we have to have more or less personnel on the city payroll, or we have to go ahead and contract out in addition to the contract with our current system versus the system that you're recommending we approve?
It requires us much more personnel to run our existing Novell system.
I'm sorry, it requires what?
Many more personnel to run our system on site than it would be to go to this Google solution. To go to today, between the LAPD and our environment, which are two different Novell environments, it requires 16 personnel to run that. And when we go to a Google/CSC solution, it will require us 4 people.
Okay, so basically that's 12 bodies.
Correct.
And every department has been forced and or required to go ahead and reduce the number of bodies on payroll, right?
That's correct.
Has your department been an exception?
No.
Okay. Has your department actually reduced bodies, especially when it comes to tech? I'm assuming these are technical people that would have to be in charge of that. It's not just somebody you get for $7 an hour to just stand there and stare at them, correct? It would be somebody who actually knows technology and actually has to be technically savvy and also marketable.
Correct. I mean, these are system engineers, system operators, programmers, of that nature.
Have we ever had a problem keeping those kinds of people in this environment?
Yes, absolutely. We've lost 85 people in the last 18 months to the proprietaries, 85 very good technical resources.
Okay, so these technical people make us very vulnerable to be able to sustain the system we have today.
That's correct. We've lost 3 actually in the last few weeks. One who was the most senior Novell group-wise engineer that we had.
Okay. So we've actually had experts learn and know how to handle the current system. If we continue with this current system, are we going to have a problem sustaining or maintaining the system the way we've configured your department as far as the limitations on how many bodies you are allowed to have?
Yes, we will have a problem.
We will have a slight problem, you can get over it, or will we have a problem that you're probably going to have to bring to our attention more than once, say in the next 12 months, if we continue to budget you and require you to hold down the number of bodies, yet at the same time, if we keep the aging system we have today, would we be able to maintain it in a fashion that is satisfactory to us?
Not without us providing some additional resources. We would need to come back to the council.
Okay. And not in anticipation, and as a result of the budget process, have you had to make decisions to go down to a very low level of the number of bodies that you have that are capable within your department to sustain the current system?
Yes, we have had to do that. We've moved people around based on what the needs are, where we have vulnerable skill sets, and that's a huge issue for us as well.
So, for example, the 3 people that have left most recently, who are these technical folk, the 3 people that have left, does it take you a day, a week, a month, or sometimes it takes a long time to fill those positions?
Oh, I'd say at least 3 to 6 months if we're able to get a position approved.
Okay. And the situation we're in right now, are we in a good position when it comes to being able to lose more bodies and sustain the system, or we're in a vulnerable position?
No, the only position in the last, I'd say, 6 to 8 months that we've gotten approved was for a helicopter engineer for communications so that we could keep the fleet flying for LAPD and for the fire department and DWP to meet FAA certification. So that was the only position we have gotten approved.
Okay, the reason why I have to go through this is because I have a feeling that some of the council members are a little tired of hearing ITA talk about how you don't have enough people or what have you. I'm not talking about ITA as a whole. I'm talking about Novell, the system that we have today, and the fact that that system requires us to in-house maintain that system. And if we go with your recommendation, we won't have to maintain that system in-house. That system will be maintained by the actual provider, correct?
Correct.
So if they lose a body or what have you, it's their problem to fill that position.
Correct.
And with all due respect, I think they're a little bit more competitive out there in the real world to be able to fill those kinds of technical positions.
That
correct?
is very correct.
So we don't compete very well with the private sector when it comes to getting these high commodity people in today's environment, correct?
Correct.
Okay. The question of the CAO, could you brief us on the latest report that you have, please? It's my understanding that there was a report and the latest committee that heard this, which was the Budget Committee, but apparently there's, thankfully, a little bit more information that you were able to gather to give a better report today. So can you please give us that report?
Sure, absolutely. Miguel Santana, CAO. I'm recommending and supporting the department's conclusion that we are better served with the Google contract that's before you. And I'm recommending it for a number of reasons. The first is that I think it's been clear in both the department's analysis and certainly in anecdotal information that the current system is simply not adequate, that it's not as user-friendly as it could be, and it's certainly not among the most advanced of the technology that's available for email. The second reason I'm supporting this recommendation is because if you look at all the things that the city is responsible for, we need to ask ourselves whether this maintaining an email system is part of our core competency. Is this something that we're in the business of doing? Is this something that is our primary responsibility? And clearly it is not, for a number of reasons that's been stated, in terms of the rapidly changing nature of the technology, in terms of the competitiveness in maintaining a workforce, in terms of the flexibility that's needed to be on top of the latest technological advances. This is an arena where partnering with the private sector, it makes a lot of sense, then allowing us to focus on those things where we are more responsible for. The third reason, and a big part of my last report to your council, was in terms of cost. Just to be clear, this contract is cheaper than maintaining the existing contract. The Google contract, if it's adopted as being recommended, would cost the city $17.5 million. If we maintain the group-wide system, that is a cost of $22 million, almost $23 million. So there is a cost savings with the adoption of this contract. There are secondary cost avoidance issues that I think have been has been spoken about, and I think we could have done a better job in describing, and I appreciate your concerns on that, Chairman, for raising those issues. Currently, there are 13 individuals who are responsible for maintaining the group-wide system. If the council were to support this Google contract, 4 individuals will be needed to maintain that contract, leaving 9 positions available. This department, like every other department throughout the city, has been asked to engage in a series of curtailments. Certainly, they have not been spared. And what we would ask is that we would eliminate those 9 positions, providing savings to the department so that they can mitigate their shortfall for next fiscal year. In addition to that, because under the Google contract, we will not be needing servers because, of course, our email system will be maintained outside of the city. There will be about 60 servers that will be available to the city that are currently being utilized for GroupWise. On an annual basis, the city purchases somewhere in the neighborhood about 250 servers a year. This year, because of our fiscal situation, we haven't done so. We've only done about 3. If we were to approve this contract, it would allow us 60 servers that we could use when we need them, and certainly we will need them. If we were averaging about 250 a year, we're certainly going to need additional servers. And so we will have Randy going more details about the status of our current system. But through this contract, those servers could be used, and thus mitigating costs for the next following years until we obviously use up all of the servers. And the final reason why I'm supporting this particular contract is because I think there's something to be said about process. I wasn't here when your council supported the idea of exploring private partners to do this work. There was an RFP that was done that was very clear in the kinds of things we were in the market for. Greater security and disaster recovery were actually among those things we were hoping to get. But I think we were basically in a situation where we're acknowledging that this is an arena where we felt the private sector could really lend us a hand. The department, my office, or the city attorney have engaged in a very lengthy process, I think much longer than we all anticipated, but it is what it is. And so I believe that because we did this process, we did solicit interest from the private sector, and we fulfilled that process with integrity. I do believe that we have an obligation to complete that process. And barring some major information or some new incident why we shouldn't support this contract, I think in order to maintain consistency and integrity in our systems and our processes, it makes sense to do so. The question has been asked about how do we pay for the system this year, because there'll be a period of time that we'll be having to run 2 systems while we move out of the existing system and adopt this new one, which through this fiscal year. There's been a settlement that results in some dollars for the city, one-time dollars, that are, I believe, are a good place to make sense to utilize those dollars for this system. Number one, because I'm a strong believer that one-time savings should go for one-time investments. It should not go for ongoing program, and this is a one-time cost that we'll be having. 2, because this investment will actually result in greater efficiencies and savings. And 3, that even in the worst of times, and certainly we're very close to that, this organization will continue to exist. And much like electricity and water and gasoline, maintaining an email system is not a luxury item. It is a critical component it's a critical tool in getting our work done. And so it's not one of those things that we could say, well, maybe we shouldn't invest in it, or maybe we should get rid of it altogether. We simply don't have that choice. And so because it's one-time dollars, because this will result in greater efficiencies, I'm recommending and supporting the department.
Thank you. Now, one thing I would like you to clarify, please. We don't have a gun to our head or anything like that. You're not saying that we should go through with this process, and you agree with the process as far as your analysis goes, and you agree with the recommendation based on some false urgency. You're doing it based on your analysis and based on how you feel about that recommendation. You feel good about that recommendation, or you feel some kind of false urgency? When I say false, I mean something that's hindering you from just saying, you know what, I think this is the best thing for now.
Well, I think, certainly having unrestricted dollars is a precious thing, certainly in this time. And as your financial advisor, it's my job to recommend how to best use those very precious dollars. But I think because this is an investment in ourselves, in allowing us to be more efficient, I think it does make sense to proceed forward with this contract. I think going back to the original point where, does the existing system, is it adequate enough? Does it work for us? Well, I think there's a general consensus that it could be better. And so regardless of what action the council does take, I do recommend that the council give us direction to find alternative ways of improving the existing system.
Okay. Should we not go with the recommended change?
That's correct.
Yeah, I'll push my button again, Mr. President. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, Mr. Garcetti, followed by Mr. Parks, then Mr. Koretz. Mr. Garcetti.
Thank you very much, and thank you, Mr. Chair, for walking us through many of those issues. If you'll excuse me, and I know it's not your job interview, you've been confirmed and been in the position, but can I start from about 50,000 feet first and ask you, Randy, to lay out a little bit of what your vision is for information technology and collaboration in the city of Los Angeles? If you'll please hold my tongue.
What we in the department are trying to do is position the technology agency for the city for the future. We're trying to put tools in place to help the city become as efficient and productive as possible. And we want to do that in the most effective, cost-effective, efficient manner. And we also want to take into account the resources or the lack of resources that we have and the skill sets that we have. So we are overall behind in technology. Now, in some areas that's okay. In other areas it's not okay, and it's not okay for a couple of reasons. And the not okays usually include we can't support it, it's old, it needs an upgrade, and that usually requires capital to remedy those situations. So everything that we're trying to look at right now is really to position us to be able to provide tools to the departments so that they can do their work more efficiently. This is one of them. This will allow people out in the field to have access to email, access to pictures, access to whatever information they need to be able to do their job more efficiently. So it really springboards us forward, in our technology needs. The other thing it does is it provides us disaster recovery, which we do not have today. And if there is a major earthquake in this city, which there might be, it will take us a while to be able to get the email up and running again. So when we're looking at all of our various technology ideas and initiatives, we're trying to do that to be able to springboard us forward, to be able to provide the departments tools that will make them and make this city as effective as possible.
I'll get back to that in my concluding remarks, whether it's this time or if I have to press the button again. But I think that's the core of where we need to start this discussion, and I appreciate you articulating that. Because what we're talking about today may be an individual contract, but it gets to the heart of what we do, colleagues, and what this city should be doing in terms of how we use information and how we use technology to provide better services, more reliable services, more cost-effective services, but also more innovative services. For me, that's the vision that we should be pursuing here. There's no question to me that we should be moving towards the cloud, whether that's Google, whether that's Microsoft, whether that's Novell in the future, whoever it is. I think we've had much that's in the cloud essentially because we're linked through the internet, and we also have a lot that we've had here. But long-term, part of what we've been hampered by, and I think the employees of ITA have done an extraordinary job with too few resources and too many systems, but we need to get that to a place that is more coherent. And though we're a big enterprise in the IT world, we're a very small one and can definitely leverage more of what we're doing. I have a number of questions about specifically some of the cloud issues and some of the things that were raised, and then I want to say a few things. First of all, have we ever been subject to denial of service attacks on the current service that we have right now for our email?
Yes, we have. I'm going to let Kevin Crawford, he's my AGM, answer that.
Denial of service attacks?
Yes.
Has that happened to us here?
Yes.
Okay. So that's, I know, been a concern when people say May, for instance, Google went down. That was a concern. And Google, just to be clear, is not giving us separate servers. We're in their large tank. If Google goes down, we go down, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
That is correct.
But we've also gone down on our own because of those denial of service attacks, or not?
Yes.
Okay.
Not working.
And I think we covered, I think Mr. Carden has covered, but this is not new money that we're going to be saving, but it's money that we've budgeted that we need to save, that if we don't do this, we don't save. Is that correct? Is that maybe the CAO can speak to that? Yes.
Yes.
Okay. If something goes wrong, what are the costs for us leaving the cloud with our email systems if we ever wanted to come back? Is this kind of past the point of no return because the restartup costs are going to be such a barrier?
At some point, there is a cost to return back to an in-house solution. I can't see us doing that, actually, in the near future. I mean, today, if most people's personal email is in a Yahoo or a Gmail or a Hotmail, most people do not have a desire to bring that onto their own desktop and leave it there. So I can't actually imagine that we would actually move back.
And part of the reason is that expensive barrier to entry of the price?
The way the contract is currently written is that we require Google to give us all of our data back that is included in the cost. So that part of the cost, that wouldn't be a barrier to us moving back. But we also wrote into the contract that the data could be moved to whoever our next carrier is. So if we decide that this one didn't work out and we're moving on to somebody else, we can migrate at that point.
Do you know cases where, there's obviously different features between a Hotmail and a Gmail and and Yahoo. Has that been done? Have we seen in the cloud people completely migrate their data from one system to the next? Threaded conversations, for instance, in Gmail is not how Yahoo works. It works more on a folder system. Is that interoperability very easy?
I wouldn't be able to answer that. I don't know.
It's just something for us to consider. Obviously, for us to be able to have the full flexibility, Microsoft may have a product that we want to move to in the future. Google may have a better product. We may want year to year to go back and forth, but I think it's very important for us to know that. I mean, we can get the data, but if the data is not completely compatible with all the features of the new system, it locks us in and gives us less flexibility on our pricing in the future.
Correct.
Are we subject to any advertising in the Gmail system that we'll have?
No.
Okay. Is that an option? Not that I want advertising, but in the future, if we wanted it to be cheaper, is that an option?
We can always discuss that with them.
Okay. Is there any external collaboration ability for non-city users, for members of neighborhood councils, for the community, for others on shared documents across the Google platform with this? Are we able to do that with Google Docs? So we can give permission. Say we have a community group in Silver Lake that's working with us on a mobility plan on our Dash bus. Can we then invite them into the documents that we're working on and all of that?
Yes, you do that through Google Sites.
And they don't have to have, do they have to have a Google account for that? Or can you invite folks permissions in from a Yahoo or a Microsoft?
If they're going to work within the site so that they're actually doing data manipulation, updating a document or everything, then yes. Otherwise, reading ability or view ability is there.
What is the storage time? One of the concerns I have is right now in public records requests, we keep things archived for some time, which is a good thing for the public, for the media, and for others. Would that in any way be compromised? And what is the average storage time now versus what it would be under Google for public records and emails?
In our current email system, each individual has the ability to archive their data, so it's an individual choice. We do have requirements in our from city clerk, from the city attorney, and so on for legal requirements. and also in each of the departments have those requirements. But the difference for this system is that all of the email will go into the archive system. We can mark it to whatever the rules are so it's kept. But if it is like a permanent record or whatnot, we would still want to bring it back into our permanent system. We have a 7-year max archive in this system.
And so those requirements would be maintained at the same level?
Absolutely.
I think this ran maybe a couple times when I was listening, so if I can just have a minute to conclude, maybe I'll see if there's any other questions. There's no question that cloud computing is all the hype that people put out there, and there's a lot that is totally untrue. It is everything that we imagine it to be, and many things are overstated. It's both, I think, overhyped and underappreciated. It's both vulnerable and secure. It means many things, so I think it confuses people when we talk about cloud computing. But colleagues, in the most simple terms, there is much that the City of Los Angeles should not be in the business of doing. But I do want to tie back into what our vision of collaboration and coordination is. I mean, for me personally, I see a time when we use this, and we use this more aggressively, so that many employees do not have to commute to work, where we've talked about that for many years. We're talking about reducing our carbon footprint, but this becomes a reality because we can have community meetings in which multiple people can come into a library where we have a video camera, and everybody is on Google Chat together, whatever the platform is, where we can do that between our offices, where we're not going back and forth, but also where we're encouraged to collaborate. And one of the things I would push the ITA agency to do is help us, and I know it's very difficult to do this in lean times, but help us see the best practices out there. There's nothing inside the city family or for our collaborators in the public to see what are some of who are the innovators in different departments, because every department has some tech geeks who love playing with this stuff and using it. But what's an example of a great collaborative community meeting that happened using that, where 5 or 6 people were able to be there, but they're in their house, because they didn't have to battle 2 hours of traffic, just as we do in our council meetings in San Pedro or Van Nuys. Give us an example of a blog maybe that's ongoing where community neighborhood councils and others can talk about what they're doing innovatively with. I think giving us the technology is one thing, but using it and training it, we don't have more training dollars, but we do have a lot of people who are doing this already. We need to learn from one another. We need to share that. To me, that's the great advantage of where we're going to innovate on this, where we're going to be better on this, and where we're going to have a city that truly is cutting edge. We've taken about 7 of the 10 steps to get there, but these last few are very important. I strongly support us moving to the cloud today, and the CIO's and the department's recommendation on this contract. Not because it's going to save us a godzillion amounts of dollars. It will save us some, and that's very important. But because I think what it does for reliability and our ability to collaborate and be better policymakers, that's really where the gold mine is. But we need to make sure that that vision gets articulated too. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Garcetti. Mr. Parks.
Thank you, Mr. President. Let me just ask a couple of questions, because one of the concerns I have in having reviewed this at 2 committees and then hearing the comments today is that there's a lot of inconsistencies. And one of the number one that I left ITGS concerned about was security. We asked that question again at Budget and Finance, and we hear it today. But what was very, very important to me is when LAPD came to the table, the most they would say is, we agree in concept. They didn't say we buy the system. They said we agree in concept. And now we're saying they support it. The dilemma is that agreeing in concept versus supporting the system is totally different. And then if we're waiting for DOJ as the final arbiter, where are we if they don't buy off? Where are we in the cost of running 2 systems?
Can we invite the CIO of LAPD up to join us?
Because I think he was at the meeting at Budget and Finance, although he didn't speak, but he was there.
Good morning. Tim Riley from LAPD, the CIO. Councilmember Parks, in answer to your question, the issue that we have is that the GovCloud that we would support is not in existence today. So we can only say that we agree in concept because we haven't seen it, and that's DOJ's position. Conceptually, it appears it would meet all security concerns and requirements, but without it being in front of us, they're not going to render a final opinion on that.
Well, and I think you're in a fairly safe position because you have the upgraded system, so you're in no rush to move if it doesn't fit your needs.
Correct.
Okay. So the issue, we're right back to where we started from. You can't support something you haven't seen. DOJ can't support what we haven't seen. And the best you can say today is concept. Correct. Okay. That's a major issue for me. The other issue is that I was wondering, and maybe, how long did LAPD start on your upgrade to level 8?
We did the level 8 upgrade. You have to start with the servers first, and we completed that about 5 to 6 months ago.
And then from your upgrade, what is your impression of the service and issues that you're dealing with now on your email system and your applications?
From a user perspective, because I'm one of the ones that have the 8, it certainly is a better experience. We don't have some of the problems that we had with the earlier version. It's not significantly better. It's certainly more reliable, and the user interface is somewhat better. The search capabilities are a bit better on it, but it's not a significant change, I would describe it as.
The issue is, have you found less people, less servers, or is it just a newer application as opposed to a reduction in cost?
From our perspective, we didn't reduce any servers. It's pretty much just an upgrade using what we had before.
Okay, when you say upgrade, you had to buy newer servers, or you bought newer applications? What was the upgrade?
The upgrade was the application itself, and that comes as part of our service agreement with Novell, so there's no extra cost for that.
So they just upgraded it because your current system was basically outdated?
Yes, and there were some issues with the previous version, and this newer version fixed some of those problems.
Okay. So you did not have to add cost to that upgrade?
No, sir.
Okay. And then let me ask IT, on the sense of, the largest user in the city, LAPD, upgraded to level 8. Why didn't the rest of the city move in that direction?
We looked at this a year and a half ago, and the estimate we had is the same estimate we have today of about $700,000 to do this upgrade, because we needed to bring in additional resources given the 90 post offices, 90 servers we have, in addition to 17,000 users, and because we had to visit multiple desktops in order to do this implementation, because we cross multiple departments, and multiple departments have implemented the front end, how they want to implement the front end, so it requires more labor for us to go do this upgrade.
Okay. But if LAPD can upgrade for no cost with 13,000 employees, and we're going to add another 4,000, why would it cost the rest of the city $700,000?
I believe that also LAPD has newer servers. 80% of our servers are 5 to 10 years old, and many of them are in the 8 to 10 years old arena, and they're so slow that what we need to do is replace them, so that's factored into that $700,000 cost.
Again, on the servers, what was a concern to me, on one of the early reports by ITA, we said part of the savings was that we wouldn't have to replace servers, but then today we say we can take the servers and use them elsewhere. So are they degraded? Are they no longer usable? Can they be used again? Because that was the impression we got on the early ITA report. The way we saved money was to move the server, to not replace servers that were no longer usable.
Okay, I'm sorry that it wasn't clear. 32 of them are needing to be retired right now. And the other 60-ish, what we want to do is take some of the other servers that we have for other applications and use those to replace some of the outdated ones there. Most of our entire pool is 8 to 10 years old of servers, and I think Miguel said we bought 3 servers last year. That's really not a lot for a department that has, close to 240 and then does supply servers to other departments as well. So we try and reuse our resources as best as possible. So we always do what they call a cascading of hardware, where we will take out older hardware and replace it with, used hardware but newer hardware.
Has there been any consideration of upgrading the city to level 8 with less servers?
The only way we could do that is if we bought some new servers.
I mean, my understanding is that my understanding is about the current system, is that the reason we have so many servers is that the city mandated that configuration. If we did it again today, would we do the same thing, or could we do it with less servers?
No, we certainly wouldn't implement it the same way, particularly if we started from scratch. I mean, we would buy servers that had a lot more capacity and could do some other things, but given that this is the situation that we have 30 that need to go, and then we have a number that are nearing their end of their useful life, we only have really 20% that are really viable for the future to, I don't want to get into too technical terms, but to be able to actually virtualize that 20%. And then we would need to buy additional hardware as well.
But would we have saved money had we basically moved forward on an upgrade but reconfigured the servers with the higher powered ones you're talking about?
I think we included that in our analysis. Right now, we don't believe, based on our current configuration and how to upgrade it, we don't believe we would save any money.
Okay. And then let me ask one of the things on savings overall. Jacob, you were at the Budget and Finance, and someone made a comment about savings, and you interrupted and said, let me be frank, that it is more costly with the system that's being proposed over the 5-year period. Are those numbers still consistent?
I'll go ahead and answer that.
You're not going to let Jacob speak?
He could speak, certainly. He's entitled to speak if you like. Jacob works for the CEO's office. The difference in the most recent report that we released was that following discussions with ITA, they agreed to no longer request the continuation of the positions that were identified as not being necessary for the Google system, and also that the servers, rather than being sort of used at this time, would be used only to offset the need for replacement servers.
So where they were originally talking about reallocating the positions, that's no longer part of the equation.
That change in position they would eliminating those positions in the budget next year changed the cost calculation that I stated in Budget and Finance Committee.
Okay. Then let me ask one other question, then I'll push my button again. When we talk about emergencies in the system, and we talk about the emergency and what the benefits on Google for the current system, I mean, when we think about emergencies, is it any different than what we currently deal with on telephone lines or cell sites or radios or fiber optics or satellite? Is it any different? When under a major emergency, any one of those could go down.
We have redundancies, and Tim could talk to this too. We have redundancies in our telephone network. We have redundancies in our microwave network. There are redundancies there. We do not have any backup or redundancy for our email.
We have none in the current system, and you're saying this system will provide it?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, and then how would it provide the redundancy?
The way Google technically architects their system is that it's copied when you're writing an email to two other different places. So, and they're two different physical locations within the continental U.S. So automatically there is a backup in another location. In addition to that, we are providing two different carriers, I believe it's AT&T and Verizon, to carry communications. In the event one goes down, then the other one would be available. So we're trying to build in as much redundancy as possible.
And that's not available on the upgrade of the current system?
If we upgraded the current system, we would still have to either contract with an outside company someplace else in the United States or build a separate environment someplace else in the United States for us to fail over our email system to.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Parks. Our next speaker will be Mr. Koretz, followed by Mr. LaBonge.
Thank you. And I'm trying to sort this all out. I'm not sure which direction I'm ready to go in. It's unclear to me whether we're on the cutting edge or whether we're on the edge of a cliff and about to step off. We've seen other government entities confidently move forward with state-of-the-art computer systems like the LAUSD and then had them find that confidence bit them somewhere. This seems like it's probably the system of the future. The question is the future here yet? Now, one of the things we've been talking about in all these committees is how bad the current system is. But we haven't had a lot of conversation about how much better the upgrade is or has the potential to be. So we're sort of talking about apples and oranges. We've mostly been whacking the system that we all agree is bad, but we haven't been talking a lot about how much better the potential upgrade is. Costs have also been a moving target. We've seen different costs and different reports, and I'm not sure I have a sense of where those costs really are, and if we had a report a week from now, whether those costs would be different again. So I have a few questions. One of them is we've been told that different companies and different cities have these programs. What percentage of these companies that have the programs have moved to using them in a significant number? For instance, Motorola, Genentech, Washington, D.C., what percentage of their employees have actually moved to Gmail as opposed to just buying the system?
Genentech has moved 100% to the Google Apps system. Washington, D.C. is using Google Apps email as their DR. So that is their disaster recovery for their in-house email system.
But they're not using
Google
Gmail at all, right?
They're using it as their disaster recovery.
So they're not using it for email, for the system we're talking about?
They provided a different methodology, and they allowed their users to pick which email system they wanted to use so that they could migrate over time to Gmail. So it's been a different approach. So the first step was to use it as disaster recovery, and then the second step was to give their users the option of being on the old or on the new, and I believe as of right now 11 or 12% of their users have moved to the new.
And the percentage of Genentech employees that have actually moved to Gmail?
They're 100% on Gmail.
Oh, I've been told otherwise by other folks, so I don't know how to sort out.
We can tell you that we talked to their CIO, and they said that they are 100% on Gmail.
And Motorola?
I don't know. We could ask the Google folks. We don't know those statistics. If you'd like.
Yeah, if they know what that number is, that would be a good thing to hear, and confirmation on Genentech also.
Genentech has moved all 20,000 employees to Google Apps. They started with the Google Calendar, which they've moved every employee to. They're in the process of migrating all the employees to email. I want to say, because it's important, there's 8 different applications within the service set in different organizations like DC or Genentech, typically start in different places based on their own priorities. But Genentech has every employee on Google today. Motorola is in midstream today. They will have their entire mobile devices division on Google in a matter of a few weeks, on Gmail and Google Calendar, etc. GE Plastics has moved 100% of their employees to Gmail. It is clear that more than 1 million businesses have moved all their employees to Google.
Thank you. For the LAPD folks that have moved to the upgraded system with Novell and GroupWise, are you still having problems? Are there difficulties that you're aware of that are similar to the many difficulties that people have had with the old system?
No, and I can speak as a user that the issues that we experienced on the previous version are no longer there on version 8. So to us, it's a more stable platform. The server version of it's fine, although we've had to do a couple of a hot patch and then a service pack that's already been installed since we've began the testing about 5 months ago, but it's very stable.
And why have you recommended moving to the Google system then?
Well, I think for us, Google offers obviously an enhanced user interface, so there's more features and functionality. The calendar in particular is very attractive. And then for us, where we really see a lot of labor is on the back end when we need to respond to a subpoena or an internal investigation and we have to produce the emails. From what we've seen and what we've been told on the Google side, there are more robust tools to be able to recover that email, to be able to produce for a subpoena or for an internal investigation. Also, the archiving appears to be better, too. And the reason I'm a bit hesitant on that is because we haven't physically used it yet. So this is what we've seen, what we've been told, and what we've had some limited experience in.
Okay, and it was mentioned earlier, I think it was in citizen comments, that liquidated damages aren't in the contract in terms of a security breach. If there is a security breach, and I have to say in committee, we heard from consumer advocates that expressed a significant concern with Google security. What happens if there's a security breach and it costs the city a considerable amount of money to deal with that?
Currently in the contract, there are several provisions that provide unlimited damages to the city. Not liquidated damages, meaning that there's a number that is already identified, but it's an unlimited number that we can seek in those. Security breach is one, non-disclosure is another, which is an agreement that says you don't have the right to disclose anything that we give you, and there are a couple of others.
So we are covered in that arena. Now, the government cloud part seems to be a factor that everyone views as desirable.
Yes.
How does the fact that that hasn't been built fit in, and is it actually in the contract, or is it just something that is theoretically in the future?
The GovCloud is specifically a physically and electronically separated environment. It's an exact duplicate of their commercial environment, not their free environment, but their commercial environment. The big difference in the GovCloud is that the staff that will be maintaining that area will have certain clearances that are required by LAPD, California DOJ, FSMA. So all of those things will be obtained for those people. For instance, the fingerprinting, which has been brought up many times for staff, which is required in our system today.
And my understanding is that this is the first contract of this size or anything close to it that Google and CSC have engaged in. Do we have any level of discomfort with that? I've expressed a concern that we're kind of guinea pigs in this regard.
Well, I actually wouldn't view us as guinea pigs, because if you look at the commercial accounts for Gmail right now, when you have 100 million users on a Gmail system, I don't view that as guinea pigs. So this is, the GovCloud is a separate environment that they're building, but, you know, it really isn't a risk because it's the same exact software that they're running today for their commercial environment.
And could I ask the same question about damages to City Attorney's Office?
Yes.
Who would be the right person to
Ted Jordan.
answer that question?
Whoops.
Ted Jordan from the City Attorney's Office. Could you ask the question again? I'm sorry.
Question is whether, in the case of a difficult and expensive breach of security, whether there's some form of liquidated damages in the contract, and whether the city would be fully covered in that instance.
No, there's no form of liquidated damage provision in the contract. Right now, the contract and the contract that was originally submitted earlier in October, there's two areas that are touched upon. One is, in the contract, there's a limitation of liability that limits or caps the maximum liability of the contractor to the city in the event of some kind of problem. Carved out from that limitation of liability are security breaches. So if there's a security breach that costs the city literally $500 million, the contract does not limit the liability of the contractor. That being said, we would still have to pursue a claim against the contractor, and if it was resisted, negotiate a judgment for that amount, as compared to a liquidated damage provision, which is a more streamlined approach where the parties agree ahead of time, look, if there's a breach, this is what the damage will be. So the contract does not include a limitation of liability as to damages from security breach. The second aspect in the contract, and again, the contract that was submitted originally, is the indemnification provision. So if there's a security breach that's caused by the contractor and some third party gets sued and brings a claim against the city, we literally just submit that claim to the contractor and say, the breach was your problem, you deal with it, and they defend and indemnify the city. Again, it's not a liquidator damage provision. It's simply a way that the contractor then has to take responsibility.
Now, if we altered it to make it a liquidated damage provision, would that be more in our interest or to our advantage?
It would be. It would be. What's difficult in the case of a security breach is it's hard to know what the damage would be because it really depends on the breach. You can imagine security breaches that are relatively minor, or you can imagine security breaches that are extreme. The purpose of a liquidator damage is generally to sit down and assess ahead of time, well, how much is the city going to be damaged? It's harder to do in this case.
So, Mr. Koretz, your time is over.
Thank you.
You can press it and we can go back to you again. Mr. Labange, followed by Mr. Alarcon, Ms. Hahn, Mr. Cardenas, Mr. Garcia, then Mr. Koretz again. Mr. Labange.
Good morning to everybody. On these, all right, Matt, 11:59. So 1 minute ahead. So on the issue here, CAO, you recommend this. Cost effective.
Yes.
Right thing to do.
Yes.
And you're relatively new to the city family. What is the county doing? Thank you, Ms. Hahn.
I don't know what the county is doing in this area. I haven't. It was certainly not a discussion item when I was at the county.
Right, but I think that's something to look for where we could share, because I know there was leadership that brought a city-county operation together for our crime lab and other issues as we go forward in this deal here. Mr. Koretz made a good point, I believe, a number of points, but one of them on the liability issue there. So just to clear, when we buy a truck for a city service, and there's the truck for the city services doesn't operate or flips over, we go back to the manufacturer and say, why did you let that happen, and who's assigned responsibility to that? In this particular case, if there was a breach, because you made some questions, I think, in the security of things, is the company responsible for that?
Well, if there is a security breach,
right? Let's just say there's a case in a division in LAPD that affects the outcome of a family's life due to a crime that occurred, and information was breached in the computer system, and the family then dissolved in a horrible way because of the breach. Who would be responsible for that?
well, if there's a security breach that's the fault of the vendor, then the city's position is going to be it's their fault, and they're responsible.
So I want to hear the vendor say it's our fault if that happens.
Pardon?
I want to hear the vendor say it's our fault if that happens. Right?
Well, if that happens, it would have to be first determined who caused
through the process, but that's but you got the analogy on that. So we have a vehicle, and the vehicle malfunctions and it rolls. They go back to the vehicle manufacturer and they look at the...
Correct. If the system were to malfunction, we would hold the contractor responsible. There's no limitation on their liability because the limitation on liability doesn't apply to security breaches.
Right.
So we would say, one, you're responsible, and two, you're responsible for everything without limit.
All right. And Ms. Bradshaw, on the issue of city departments, what does Jim Featherstone think with emergency preparedness? Has he been briefed on this? You could hold my time. Anna? Thank
Yes.
you, Anna.
I don't know if he's here, but he is quite concerned about not having disaster recovery for email, and he is very much for this project so that he can actually get disaster recovery, because when there is an earthquake, that is one of the primary vehicles or any kind of event that people use to communicate.
Right. I did see something of a system for even the fire department. And now the fire department has been reviewed and briefed, and they support this?
Yes, and they're here as well, and they're
Right,
very
who's here for the
supportive.
fire department?
Dennis Blumhoff?
Hold my time, will you? Give the fire department,
We've been holding your time, Mr. LeBon.
thanks. Because conceivably, this could be used by field commanders at an incident, correct?
Good afternoon. Yes, Dennis Blumhoff with the Fire Department.
It's easier if you look to the chair, because then
It's
the microphone...
entirely possible for us to be able to do as you've indicated. The system can be used not only for day-to-day administrative purposes, but operationally it can be used as well.
And you support it, Chief Peaks, and everybody down the line?
Yes, sir. I have fully briefed the current fire chief and the past fire chief. I have also briefed and given demonstrations of the current system to all of the management members of the fire department. We support the moving forward with this contract. We support the technology, and I think that the vision is we do need to have public and private partnerships, and this is the direction we need to move in. I would ask the question, what do we do today with the current GroupWise? How have we mitigated our problems? And I think we've done more work to address mitigating future problems with this particular contract with this vendor than we have with GroupWise as a solution.
One of the greatest places in the city of Los Angeles to be is in a public library where they have banks of computers. What will this do for the library system? Hold my time. Because the people then have access. It's information is knowledge is power. So all this adds together. So did anybody say that before me? I think somebody did. Who said it before me? Did I make that up? George Washington. George Washington said it. He said that as he's crossing the Delaware there. So what about the library? What about the library? Yeah.
End users coming into the library would be able to use Gmail the way they do today.
Correct. And the library department's been briefed and they support it?
Yes, yes. We've had, like I had mentioned, a multi-department task force. We have done, 90 to 100 demos of this system. I can't even count anymore. But yes, they're very supportive.
They support it. So that's assurance for me. The thing I asked that I always want to ask from ITA, on like News Central, when you watch in the morning and the traffic, and Vera Jimenez is giving the traffic report, she goes on there and you point right down to an intersection. We'll be able to have that here in council chambers?
The technology comes with so many capabilities. One is this Google Sites, which we can actually manipulate and create websites easier, put maps on, which is really what you're talking about, various kind of maps based on different scenarios. Like if there was another Griffith Park fire, we would be able to put it up there and maybe show exactly where it was, show pictures. I mean, it gives us tools to be able to pump out this content, pump out information much more quickly.
Now, I know where Walt Disney lived on Kingswell Avenue, east of Vermont, when he first came to Los Angeles, but where actually was Google founded, if you went up on a map in the world? Anybody know? You could ask that if there's somebody from Google. I just want to know. Last question. Does anybody know exactly where Google was created? And where? Menlo Park in the garage. Did they have a city permit to be in that garage?
Thank you, Mr. LeBon. Thank you. Mr. Alarcon, followed by Ms. Hahn.
I was thrown off by the Disney question. What are we talking about? Okay. A couple of concerns, just to raise them. With regard to the idea that Google has developed its company on the basis of mining information that comes to them by virtue of using the system. To what extent have we shielded the emailers in our system in this contract so that their information will not be mined and therefore used by Google in other applications?
In the contract, it states very clearly that the data is our data. It is not the data for Google. And so they have no ability to use our data It is we own the data.
They have no ability, or it's not in the
They have
contract?
no right. I'm sorry, I used the wrong
Then
word.
what have we done to shield them, should it be inappropriately used?
We're going to have city attorney answer that.
Hold my time, please. You're holding everybody's time, right? Oh, now you weigh in.
I'm sorry, could you repeat that question?
I'm concerned about the issue of mining information and then using it for other applications. Google has become renowned for their system, which literally mines the information of those who use the system, and then uses that information in other applications. So the question is, how have we shielded or protected our users from reusing information that might be coming into the system?
The customer data, which is our information, is owned by the city, and they're precluded from disclosing the customer data to anyone else.
So what if they do?
Well, then we're talking about breach of
So that would be a breach.
That would be a breach
That
of
would
their
be a breach,
confidentiality
and
obligation.
therefore we could take action against them.
You could take action against them. Again, though, what are your damages? You'd have to prove that. You could certainly terminate the contract for breach.
Now, I'm less concerned about the breach than the perception that our users, the constituents of the city of Los Angeles, might fear that their information is going into the Google world and could be used by other parties. Could it have a diminishing effect on people participating in our email system?
I think that what we need to do is just educate our user community about how the Google system is set up and the fact that we are going to be administering it ourselves. So Google will not be administering it. We're going to be able to tell who's going to have access to what data based on the requirements of the departments. So I just think it's a bit of an education process that we're going to need to go through.
A bit of an education process?
Well, look at it this way, Councilman.
We're talking about 3 million people. My concern is that there may be, we are moving our entire system to get more and more engaged in email as a process, whether it be for an application at Building and Safety or whatever. The question I'm asking is, how are we protecting our constituents, or how are we ensuring to them that their information is going to be secure? I mean, I don't want them to not move forward with us.
It's a very technical discussion. I mean, the way they have set up their system. But you have to look at your own experience today. Everybody trusts Yahoo Mail or Hotmail or, Gmail with their personal information. And most people don't worry about every day whether or not that information is going to be breached, or whether somebody else is going to take that information. Same thing with your bank information. Everybody's bank account is in the same system with everybody else's. So how do you know that your bank information isn't going to get merged with anybody else's? All of these systems are set up to ensure that there is adequate security for a particular user for a particular environment.
So we should just trust them? Is that what you're saying?
Well, no, we get into, the question is, do we want to get into a very deep technical discussion here about how the Google
I just want to answer to my
security-
question. How are we protecting our constituents from that fear?
Because we have looked at the security, and we believe that the security is adequate enough in the Google system.
How are we going to communicate that to our constituents? I'm glad you're secure. I want my constituents to be secure with the system.
We'll have to go out and educate the constituents.
What does that mean, go out and educate? Please describe that for me.
Well, we'll have to go out to the various communities.
What does that mean, go out?
Physically.
And do what? I'm a teacher. Explain it to me. What is your lesson plan for my constituents?
Honestly, I don't have a great answer to this question. Because here's the thing. For the most people, worry about the security of their own email system. And I know we are moving the city's email system there, but we have done a deep technical dive looking at this. We have the head engineer of Google here today. He sits on the board of Google. We have spent hours and hours talking to them about their security. We have been hired because of our technical expertise. We don't think that the council wants to take its time on a deep technical, dissertation about how the Google security
Are you
is.
suggesting I'm not a councilman?
No, I'm not
Then
saying
I do want to take my time to understand this. I do want to take the time to ensure to my constituents that they can trust the system.
Okay, can we have the Google engineer to come up here, please?
Jesus.
There you go. Now you're going to get your answer.
I cannot believe it.
So, as mentioned in some of my prepared comments, security is a topic that Google takes very, very seriously. It is beyond the bounds of this forum to get deeply into the technical details, but we have been involved with the committee's review of our technical systems. We also have reviews by third-party bodies, for example, SAS 70, which is an organization that reviews security and policies and performance of security systems for financial institutions. Additionally, we're in the process of going through FISMA, which is a process certified by the GSA for government procurement, specifically around security practices and policies. This is a topic that we take very seriously. In addition to the review that the committee here has done, as my colleague Dave Gerard mentioned, over 1 million businesses, public institutions, universities have also selected Google and have done varying levels of depth of review of our security policy and approach.
Okay, I have two final questions. One is regarding the, and I'm not completely understanding that answer, by the way. It seems to me there has been no design for an outreach program for the constituency that is going to be most impacted by this email system. Those were horrible answers. The second question I had is with regard to the email system. People are saying, opponents are saying that nobody has ever developed, that this cloud system is actually in development, it's not actually real, that the DC experience doesn't even involve email, they were promised email 2 years ago, it's not up to speed. Can you respond to that concern?
Well, we've talked to the CIO of Genentech, and they have almost 20,000 users on the Gmail system. So that's one example of one live user. I came from the GE environment. They don't transition any applications in a very easy manner. So if GE Plastics is moving to the cloud, then we also take a look at that seriously. The U.S. Navy is in the process of migrating over to their Gmail product. And again, we know that the U.S. Navy has done due diligence. And quite honestly, one of the assurances that you do have, I'm going to go back to the previous subject, that we do have adequate security, is that we are moving to the GovCloud, which is the segregated, completely separate environment for all of our email.
Can we go back to the question I asked just now?
Yes.
DC.
DC implemented their system
Their
for
email.
Yes, they implement.
Because I was told they don't have email today.
That isn't true.
Under Google.
That is not true. They implemented first the Google Sites. Then they implemented Google for disaster recovery, the email portion, because they had no backup for their email. And then they said to their users, you can go ahead and implement and use the primary email as Gmail, or you can use your current. And 11% of their, 11 or 12% of their population has moved to Gmail.
11% after 2 years.
That's the approach they've taken.
Well,
Mr.
okay, let's say we
time,
don't
Mr. Alarcon.
get the system doesn't get done in 6 months. What happens? We get our money back?
We have an implementation plan which has payment clauses in it 30 days after certain deliverables. We don't think it's going to take more than 6 months to transition our population of users to the Gmail system based on the implementation approach that we've identified with CSC.
But if it does, we get our money back?
Yes.
Mr. Alcon, your time. Ms. Hahn, followed by Mr. Rosendahl.
Thank you, Mr. President. Well, this seems like it's one of those meetings where everything has been said, but not everybody has said it. So forgive me if this has already been said or been asked, but I would like to focus on a couple of things that you said that I really wanted to have you elaborate a little bit more on. And that was, how does this system work in the event of a major emergency? I just want to hear a little bit more, and I know you've talked a little bit briefly about the fire, but maybe just elaborate on what exactly does that mean and how would it work. And the other thing was what I loved hearing was this actually will make our departments more efficient. And that is what I'm looking for in any decision we make. You know, we've got a budget crisis. Next year's going to get worse. Part of the issue is the financing of this kind of a system. But for me, I think we need to reinvent ourselves as a city and figure out how do we do more with less. And we're going to be having less resources in our departments. We're going to have a lot of employees that will be leaving with early retirement. How does this system make our departments more efficient? That's what I want to hear. And also, how does it actually work in the event of a major? Let's just say, I think you said we might have an earthquake. Most of us pretty much feel we will have one. It's just a matter of when. So when that happens, what makes this system work better than the one we currently have? Thank you.
Okay. What happens is that it fails over. So if our primary information is stored somewhere in California and there's an earthquake wherever it is in California, then automatically the system fails over to its next site, which will be somewhere else in the continental United States. It wouldn't be within the western region where there are these certain earthquake zones. And then there's a tertiary failover also. So in the event that area has some issue also. So we have 3 levels of protection basically, and then the only other piece that we have to worry about is the connectivity from our site to these data centers, and we're putting into place 2 different redundant paths with 2 different providers to really mitigate the risk of us going down completely. What we've seen so far when we had an earthquake, I think it was a year ago last summer, was that email traffic as well as phone traffic went way up. And in some cases, phone was saturated, but email wasn't.
Okay, that's good. That makes sense. What about, how does this make our departments more efficient?
We're giving the departments tools, and tools that they don't have today. What we're trying to do is give tools such as website design. You can design your own. You can put up your own content. Everybody really wants that. They want pictures. They want video. They want to be able to work on documents collaboratively. The council president brought up the collaboration piece, people working on the same documents. That's a big piece of what we do today in the city. Somebody will work on a document, they save it, they send it to somebody else, they edit it, they send it to somebody else. It really changes our work process when people can work on one document together and see all the changes. Plus, the new PCs that we order now are coming with cameras built in. Not that we've ordered a lot of them, but the video conferencing piece is also going to be very nice to talk about, people collaborating on a certain document or a certain issue together and not having to physically go to one location for a meeting. It's going to change the concept of meetings and hopefully not have people drive nearly as much as they do today. So there are a lot of features in here that I think are going to be very deep and very rich to provide more information and more content out to.
And ultimately, how will this maybe help the people that we all serve, our residents in Los Angeles? Will this help their experience with city departments, whether it be getting permits, planning permits, building and safety permits? Will this enhance the experience that people have interfacing with the bureaucracy at City Hall?
We believe so, because there is such demand right now for all of these websites and pushing out content, pushing out information to the public, that if we can provide tools to make that easier and more efficient, I think that's just a great thing.
Well, I appreciate that. And colleagues, I know there's a lot of complexity about this contract that we're embarking on, but I've heard those three things for me are key to this city. One is how we respond in the event of a major disaster. Two, how do we make our departments more efficient? In this time when we're asking them to cut back, we're taking employees away, we're taking resources away. And third, the thought that this could actually enhance customers in Los Angeles, our residents, their interaction with the city in a way that streamlines the process that they're engaged in. I think, for me, I'm supportive of this. I've heard what I needed to hear that says I think at this time it makes sense to get our city up to speed in this area, and I think ultimately it will make us really a world-class city in the three ways that I've just mentioned.
Mr. Rosenbaum.
Thank you, Ms. Hahn. It's always inspiring to go after you when you sum everything up for everybody. If I could ask the President of Google to come up here and respond a little bit to what you heard interacting. Hold my time, please.
Sure. Thank you. Again, I'm Dave Gerard from Google. I want to comment on a few of the things. First, the issue that the councilman brought up regarding trust and the usage of the data. This is fundamentally important to us. Our position is clear. We make this very clear in our public terms of service. And that is, first of all, the data is yours, not ours. We have no rights to share that data with third parties. We have no rights to access those systems except in the course of providing the service to you. We actually go quite far in our terms of service to put that in languages that people other than lawyers can understand. I also want to add that our entire business is based on the trust our users have in us. We have our entire franchise banked on our ability to protect and serve the data for hundreds of millions of users. So I think you can trust that Google's intentions as a corporation are in the right place. Secondly, I believe there is a misperception that this technology is bleeding edge. I think it may be fairly described as cutting edge. It is far from bleeding edge. The first large entities went live on these systems over 3 years ago. In the fall of 2006, Arizona State University moved 65,000 people onto Google Apps in a matter of a few weeks. Google moved its entire employee base, now 20,000 users, onto this system over 3 years ago. Genentech moved all of their employees over a year ago onto Google. And amongst these many thousands of schools, and also many, many businesses with thousands of employees on them, not a single one has gone back. Not one. Now, there's probably some little guys, there's enormous number, on the range of 3,000 to 5,000 small businesses sign up every day. I can't say none of them have ever changed their mind. There's far too many for me to account for them. But if any of them, that's guys, thousands of employees, thousands of students, not one has gone backwards. And I think that's a testament. I want to say one other thing. Disaster recovery. I'll give you an example that I hopefully will hit home. A business that adopted Google Apps a couple of years ago. It was all worked out of one building. The building burned to the ground. And most of their systems naturally were housed in that building. The only system they had available to them the day their building burned to the ground was Google. Because it was not hosted inside their facilities, their employees were able to continue to get work done. That is a microcosm, I think, of the situation you have here in Los Angeles.
Let me ask you a question. How long would it take to migrate everybody over to your system?
There are some choices that the city has to make, meaning how much data you want to take with you out of the old systems and what process you want to take. You can do it in stages. You can move everybody at once. Your organization has some choices to make. But frankly, from our perspective, if you chose to do it in the next few weeks, we would do it.
And then we could move the entire city into the system.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you very much. Appreciate your comments. Mr. President, let me just make 2 points. One, I don't mind being the poster boy of the big cities because they're going to do whatever they can to make us happy. Because, if anybody's having a problem, L.A. will be the first mouth to let them know. So I know we're going to get the best care and the best service. And Mr. Koretz, the future is now. It's today. My staff has come up to me over the last couple of years. Bill, the system is down. The system is down. The system isn't working. This, blah, blah, blah. We've had so much of that the inefficiency and the time wasted in doing our service to our people has reached the intolerable level. I don't need any more time to think about it. I think it's great. Let's go with Google today. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Mr. Weezer, followed by Mr. Cardenas. Mr. Weezer.
Thank you, Mr. President. I heard this item in Budget and Finance, but I wanted just to clarify one thing on the cost, because in Budget and Finance, it was put more, the way it was phrased was more that it's going to cost us more. Today I keep hearing savings, so I wanted to just clarify that very basic issue, the cost. So for this coming fiscal year, this year, 09-10, it's going to cost us an additional $1.7 million, correct?
1.9.
1.9, okay. And that, how we're going to get that funding, despite it not being allocated in our budget, is explained in our report.
We recommend using the settlement, the Microsoft settlement dollars, and as well as taking in advance the rebate that Google is offering.
Yeah. And over 5 years, it's going to cost an additional $5 million?
Well, actually, within 5 years, there's a savings associated with this contract.
So there will be savings.
That's right. We're comparing the cost of this contract versus the cost of maintaining group-wise for the next 5 years.
Okay, and
so the cost of Google on an annual basis is $17.5 million, and the cost of maintaining group-wise is $22.9 million.
Got it. And the other issue that we raised in Budget and Finance, both myself and Mr. Rosendahl raised, was the liquidated damages. And my concern was that since we are one of the large cities undertaking this project or going in this direction, there may be some risks involved because of uncertainty. And we were told by our city attorney here today that we don't have those types of clauses in other contracts such as this. Did you work out anything in the interim between Budget and Finance and today that would give us additional security or assurances that the city would be in the best position should something go wrong?
Yes, sir. We've worked with CSC, and the contract already held requirements for uptime.
Mr. Chair, can you ask the chambers to quiet down, please? I'm having a difficult time listening to the responses to my questions.
Sergeant at Arms, can you please get the chamber quiet? If you have a conversation, please take it outside the chambers. That applies to staff also. Thank you. Proceed.
So yes, we worked with CSC. We talked about the service level agreement inside of the contract. This is the uptime, which is one of the questions that we got. If the system goes down, what do we get back? And in the contract previously, or as it is currently presented to council, we had 3 levels of ability to get service back. So what they would do is they would add days to the end of the contract. And what we've talked with CSC about is, rather than changing our date because we've had an outage, we want to be paid back for the time that we've lost. And so we have included that in the contract.
Okay, great. Thank you. And colleagues, I feel like some of my other colleagues here that I think this is the right thing to do. It's the right path to go on. Our job, I think, today is to ensure that we're getting the best deal possible and that we have everything within this contract to ensure that if something should go wrong, that the city would be in the best position to protect itself. I've listened to this, and it seems that we've worked on it. Our CAO did a tremendous job on making sure that the city interests are being protected. And particularly when we're trying something new, whether it's a new way of providing lights on our streets or any new thing for the city, it's always going to involve some risk. But particularly for technology, where a lot of this is unknown, it's even something that we have to be a bit more watchful about. And our job as policymakers is to have some level of trust that our general manager, our CAO and CLA have done the best they can to make the recommendations they've made. They've made the recommendation. I trust that it's the right one. We should move ahead, because if we don't, I believe that we may be looking back in a few years from now and saying, I wish we would have. We will be missing this train to move forward on this very important endeavor that we have before us. So thank you. I support the recommendation before us today. My final question is, what exactly are we voting on? We've had an ITA report, budget and finance report. So, all right, you're going to make because there's nothing, we have two well, I'm not sure they're conflicting, but there's two different reports. And whatever motion is made, there were some amendments, I believe. I want to make sure those are clear as to what exactly we're voting on today, so we could do that with any amendment. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Huizar. Ms. Perry, for the first time.
Just want to make it very quick, and I know we've been talking for a long time. The gentleman from LAPD. No, I have great reservations letting this kind of operation go, because we lose the aspect of quality control, even though, we are obviously hamstrung in terms of number of employees in the department. And I think Mr. Zine has a list of things that he's going to share with us in a bit. My greatest concern is about security and privacy. I just want to go over this one more time. So from an LAPD perspective, am I correct in what I heard earlier that LAPD is 100% comfortable with protection of data and protection against leaks of secure information?
Providing that they implement the government cloud, which is the separation of the data, the security background done by LAPD of their staff, that they limit the number of staff people who have access to our information. With those in a position, plus encrypting the data back and forth, with those conditions in place, we would support it, yes.
And then how do you ensure that all those things get implemented?
Well, that's going to be part of, I think, the implementation and the contract requirements to ensure that those are all done. We wouldn't move our data over there until we're assured that that happens.
And then what's the ongoing monitoring aspect of that?
All right, Mr. Zine is our next speaker.
Oh, I wasn't done.
Sorry. In the middle of an answer. I'm sorry, Ms. Perry.
What's the ongoing implementation of that? What is the plan for ongoing monitoring of the implementation of that?
The contract includes within it that we have the right to audit. So yes, we do trust, we do trust Google, and we do trust them to deliver what they promise.
Okay, you didn't identify yourself for the record.
I'm sorry, I'm Kevin Crawford, AGM, ITA.
Okay, and I wanted to jump back to the fellow from LAPD, because I'm really interested in their perspective. So what's the ongoing, what protections do you have in place for ongoing monitoring of that implementation so that LAPD remains at this level of satisfaction?
We're going to have to ensure that any new employees that come on board will have the appropriate security in place. We'll have to ensure that the encryption stays in place between the networks, and we're going to have to ensure that the data is physically and virtually separated, and we'll just have to monitor that as we go down this road. I don't think those details have quite been worked out yet because the solution has not been fully developed. And once it's developed, then we can put those checks and balances in place.
I would prefer, this is just me talking, I don't know how other people are going to vote, but I would feel much more comfortable if you had those, your preference was satisfied as we take this step forward, and that the checks and balances were in place before we had to take a vote on this. So that's all I have to say right now.
Mr. Zine.
Thank you, President. I know we've been talking about this for a long time, and some of these questions haven't been answered yet. To the LAPD, DOJ, Department of Justice, FBI, our anti-terrorism, will that work with this? Have they approved this? Are they supportive of this? Hold my time, please.
DOJ is supportive of it. They have not approved it because we have not put the solution in front of them yet because it's not developed.
So if it's not developed, how are we going to work with our expanding anti-terrorism with the Department of Justice, the FBI, and the other agencies?
Well, I think from LAPD's perspective, we will not move over to that solution until all those pieces are in place and that government cloud is developed and it is proven to us that everything is as they said it would be developed.
So then we're going to have two systems? We're going to have the current system and an additional system that we're not going to be subscribing to within the department?
Initially, yes. I think ITA's position on that, and they can speak for themselves, but LAPD would be the last department to move over, and I think the time period of several months would be the time period that Google would need to develop this solution. So yes, we would stay on group-wise and probably be the last department to move off.
So the cost savings would not be initially cost savings. There'd be a continuation of the current group-wise in addition to what we're going to be phasing in.
That's correct.
So the cost savings isn't really there if we're paying for two systems. And the LAPD, with 10,000 officers, is a major development for the cost. Somebody want to answer that?
Correct, sir, and I'll let Kevin answer. But yes, we don't anticipate for LAPD any cost savings during this current fiscal year.
Was it anticipated that LAPD would be going online with everyone else in the city? The 20,000 other folks?
Yes. But the cost savings that that we provided to the CIO and worked with the CIO do not include cost savings for the group-wise system this year because we have to continue that system until we have full acceptance of that system.
And our project plan called for LAPD to go last, so we have factored all of that in.
And on the Google system, when the system fails, are there folks locally that we can contact as we can with IT, or do we have to contact someone in another state or another part to fix the system? Is it local repair or is it distant repair?
Level 1 will come to our own staff, and then we will liaise with people in, where are they? Mountain View. I wanted to say Menlo.
Well, you said you've got 16 folks now on group-wise, and with Google you're going to have 4 people.
Right. That's correct.
Well, so the 4 people are going to be involved in maintaining 2 systems? Maintaining group-wise and maintaining Google?
The 4 people, and once we have finished implementation of the Google system, will be the system administrator. So they'll be the ones granting access, taking away access, and then dealing with any of the help desk type issues that arise.
So our cost savings is not going to be seen this fiscal year, and maybe not next fiscal year, but maybe the 3rd fiscal year.
No, you're correct. There will be no cost savings this year, at least none that we're counting on. The cost savings are for next year and the following years.
And that's if everything works as expected, and if DOJ approves the system with LAPD.
That's correct.
And if they don't, then what happens? Because the LAPD is currently working with the federal law enforcement. They're currently working with the state law enforcement. The Anti-Terrorism Division works with a lot of international, and I'm sure they want a secure system. I don't want to see another system special for LAPD. If it can't work with this system, that's a major problem that we have to overcome.
Well, what we have identified through this process is the Department of Justice security requirements is the high watermark for requirements. And we've had Google also working directly with the Department of Justice in California because in many cases their requirements are more stringent than actually the federal government's. And so the Department of Justice doesn't want to have to do this each time for every jurisdiction that wants to move to a cloud computing environment. They want to work and solve this issue and this technology once, and therefore they're working very cooperatively with us and believe that what's the proposal from Google for this GovCloud will meet their requirements.
You're talking about state DOJ, you're not talking about feds.
I'm talking about state DOJ.
Okay, so the issue with the federal government, with our FBI connection with the LAPD, have they been approached on this issue?
Well, for us, how we access the federal systems is through the California Department of Justice, so they're really the conduit. If we survive, or not survive, if we comply with California DOJ requirements, that allows us to get into the federal systems. There could be some single exceptions to that based on a particular need, like there could be a particular system or a particular intelligence node that someone would have to access. In those cases, generally speaking, we don't access them through our network. We access them through a private, either a virtual private connection or a physical private connection on that, so they wouldn't interact with anything on the Gmail side.
And everything that's currently in GroupWise would be converted over to Google? All of our files, all of the documents?
That's correct.
And then when we absent ourselves from GroupWise, is there any liability with that, or is it all going to be on Google and there's no liability or any other obligation or responsibility with GroupWise? Once it's severed,
Right.
that's it?
That's it.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Chair, Mr. President.
Thank you. Mr. Cardenas.
Thank you very much. I want to make my motion, but I need to clarify a few things. Council members, the indemnifications list very long, and a lot of council members, rightfully so, had concerns about indemnifications, and the list is very long, and our staffs, the CAO, the CLA, the city attorney, ITA, have been working on those various versions of making sure that we have the best language in the contract by the time we finally sign a contract, if we do. The language has been changing and improving, and the language of today is different than it was 3 weeks ago. It's different than it was a month ago. So the bottom line is that's one of the things that we need to understand is if you heard a presentation about this 3 months ago in one of the committees or what have you, we really should be looking to the current language and the current recommendations of the CAO, the CLA, and the ITA, and also our city attorney. But one thing I'd like to clarify more for fun than anything else, I really enjoy a lot of the questions that Bernard Parks is on when he's really focused on an issue, but I really like the language that you used to the representative at PE, Bernard, LAPD. You said, so you're in no rush to move to a system if it doesn't meet your needs. And he said, of course not. But the real question is, are you under the impression, based on what the parameters that you've discussed with ITA and making sure that are in the contract, if we move to this system, will this system meet your needs based on what the parameters that you have been explained?
Yes, sir.
Okay, that's the real question. Of course, nobody's going to want to move to a system if it doesn't suit our needs. So that was cool. The next question is the thing to point out is that this system that we're talking about is not my cousin Vinny's storage and security company. This is Google. Again, they're not perfect. The system we have today is not perfect. But the fact of the matter is, Google, if anybody, is probably going to be as determined as any company on the planet, literally on the planet, to make sure that they bring the best service to the city of Los Angeles, because the titans are fighting, ladies and gentlemen. Microsoft is here, Google is here, other big world corporations are here, because as the city of Los Angeles goes, they're probably going to get recommendations, and the word on the street is going to be that that's probably the way a lot of municipalities, large and small, are going to go. So the titans are fighting, and they all want our attention. But aside from that, it's nice to know that the CLA, the CAO, and the ITA are on speaking the same language of recommending to this policy-making body, the City Council, that this is the recommendation that we go with the Google product and finalize that RFP process. So with that, my motion is to receive and file the ITGS report from August of 2009, receive and file the August 7, 2009 Budget and Finance report, and note and file item 21. And with that, I'll read specifically also to approve the contract. What's the latest date on the contract that we will have, or will it be a future date, CAO?
I believe it's the same date.
What date would that be?
October 2.
October 2nd?
I'm sorry.
October 2nd.
October
2nd.
October 2nd. To approve the contract dated on October 2nd, 2009 with CSC, attached to the CAO report as dated in the council file for the replacement of the city's email system with Google Software as Service product that includes word processing, spreadsheet, and presentation applications in the amount of $7,250,000 for a term of 3 years from the date of execution with 2 one-year renewal options, subject to the revision of the agreement to reflect the rebate advance described in the CAO report and subject to the review and approval of the city attorney as to form. Also authorize the general manager, Information Technology Agency, to seek reimbursement for qualifying hardware and software purchases by the city pursuant to the 2006 class action antitrust settlement agreement with Microsoft up to the full remaining balance of $1.5 million to be received by the city as a general fund receipt. And also instruct the general manager of ITA, upon receipt of the Microsoft settlement agreement funds, to request the CAO to recommend through its financial status report a transfer from the reserve fund to ITA in an amount up to the reimbursements received as required to fund this contract after all of the potential funding sources identified in this report have been exhausted, and also to instruct the ITA with the assistance of the CAO to identify additional funding as may be required if the sources identified in this report are inadequate for the 2009-2010 costs of this contract. Also, that we instruct the CLA, ITA, and CAO City Attorney and the LAPD report back to the Information Technology and Government Affairs Committee with a monthly status update relative to the status update within 45 days, which speaks mainly to Ms. Perry's question just a few minutes ago. And the last instruction is to instruct the CLA and ITA, CAO, and the City Attorney to finalize the contract and agree upon the language specifically referring to the 30-day right to cancel, which is something that was discussed in the Budget Committee and was very lightly touched upon today. Thank you.
Second. Mr. Koretz is our next speaker.
Yeah, first of all, I have one last question that I didn't get to the last go-round on the liquidated damages. Why were liquidated damages not included in this contract? And if you could hold my time.
Hello. I'm sorry.
The question was why were liquidated damages not included in the contract?
I can let ITA answer that. My understanding was that they asked for that. And, well, let me actually clarify. There's two types of liquidated damages that were discussed at Budget and Finance, and both have been touched upon somewhat. Let me just clarify. In the event of a service interruption, the system goes down, it's not available to us, all the productivity we're talking about is lost. We get essentially a liquidated damage for that downtime. The original contract included service credits, so days get added. As it's been modified, instead of getting days added to the service, you get essentially a cash rebate the following year. Or if we decide to terminate the contract or it expires, we get a cash rebate for all of the days lost due to downtime. That's one type. The other type was the security breach that we've talked about a number of times. And my understanding is that the contractor declined to agree to anything, so that's why there's nothing in the contract.
So if that's the case, basically, that the contractor declined to put in liquidated damages for security, I would say this contract is a little too cushy in terms of risk being taken by the city. So at a minimum, if we go forward with this, I'd like to make an amendment that we go back and ask that liquidated damages be included for security breaches in a way that they are not currently.
Is there a second?
Second for Mr. Koretz. Mr. Garcetti? Second by Mr. Garcetti.
The other thing is, let me just throw out there an idea. You may all hate it or not. I'm not making it as a motion, just putting it out there for discussion. I'm still a little tentative about this. I don't know how many of my colleagues are. I would suggest possibly something that is a little more modest. First of all, that we upgrade our Novell system to level 8, and under the proviso that that the Novell folks agree to do it at no cost to us. Our staff has said it would cost $700,000. They'd said it would cost nothing. They have to cover any of the costs that we view as the $700,000. So it would be cost-free to do the upgrade. The second piece of the suggestion I'd make for my colleagues' consideration would be to do a 6-month pilot of the Google system in one department. And while we have that, they have 6 months to develop the government cloud that doesn't really exist yet, and that if all goes well with that pilot, then we are committed to go forward with this contract. But if it turns out to be a disaster, if something dramatically goes wrong, we have the ability to not move forward. So I'm just putting it out there as a thought. In fact, at the encouragement of a couple of my colleagues, I'll make that a substitute motion. And with that proposal also, I would include liquidated damages be worked into the Google part of that pilot, and then the contract should it move forward.
Mr. Parks, you second that? Yes. Mr. Parks seconds that. Mr. Garcetti.
Thank you, colleagues. This has been a great discussion. I know a lot of people haven't been in the committees to discuss this. This is probably, for us and our staffs, the thing that we use the most. You know, it's the most direct way we communicate. That is the core part of our job, is communicating inside the city and with our constituents. So I understand why people feel so strongly about it, and I think there's been a lot of really good learning moments and a lot of good questions, some of which got good answers and some of which didn't. But by and large, it's been a very good discussion. You know, just on a couple of things that were raised, I wanted to make a couple last points. I mean, I think that, and I appreciate Mr. Kretz's creative thoughts in that last one. I think part of the problem with DC, for instance, was the option to go over. We either need to fully do this or fully don't, one way or the other. Because much of the success we'll have in a city is when the whole city goes and does this. It will be lost if we do it partially. 6 months, a long time to wait. There is a government cloud out there. The cloud exists. The cloud has existed. We're part of the cloud. Our current infrastructure is part of the cloud because we have remote login. So, you know, part of us discussing what is the cloud, what is not, we don't have to be scared of the cloud. It's not jumping off a cliff, but or falling off the cliff. But it's also something that we have to be conscious of, whether we go to a Google solution or not. Full disclosure, I haven't taken a single meeting on this besides an informational meeting with ITA where they brought Google in to show me it. I realized it was just the Gmail stuff, so it was not necessarily the most eye-opening new experience for me. I knew what the stuff was. I haven't talked to individually myself with a lobbyist on any of the sides of this, and I know that we have good companies on all sides. Full disclosure, I use Yahoo for my personal email. I use Microsoft Office all the time. I've used Google Apps for some things as well. Microsoft still wins for me in the Office suite. I know Google's working on it. We wish you luck. Hope you get there. Novell, start migrating over to the cloud more aggressively. Bottom line, I'm open to whatever company comes forward. But what I think we need not do is wait. Because if we wait right now, a couple things happen. One, we will have some costs that we have to put back in the budget. Our CAO has said that. Take away all the lobbyists from either side, take away the advocates from either side, even take away the department for a second. The CAO has acknowledged that. To me, we're so good on the budget with everything else this year, we can't afford to let up on one thing where it's been proven there's some cost to us if we have to then do that maintenance. And I don't know, Mr. Kretz, if they will pay for the city employee time too, and I don't know if they can. I understand any costs that they might have, they say we'll pay for the Novell upgrade. And by the way, I use 8, and it is an improvement in 7, but it's a better orange, it's not an Apple. So we're either going to go to the Apple, which is outsourcing our email, which is, I know, sometimes a dirty word in government, but in this case I think is a smart thing, or we're going to keep our own oranges that we're tending here and we'll make them shinier and better, and there are all sorts of things we can do to them to make them better, but that is a different decision. To me, I want to go towards the Apple. Probably the wrong fruit to be using. I want to go towards the guava. We'll choose a G one. And I think it's very important for us today to make that decision and to move forward. So I'd encourage my colleagues to do that. I think we have the protections built in. I support you, Mr. Kretz, in terms of the liquidated damages. I think that's a fair thing to ask for. And I think Google, Mr. Rosendahl made the strongest point. Google wants this to work. So even if I was saying this about Microsoft today, and the reason I'm supporting Google is this has gone through a process, and I like to support those processes when we can, unless there's something that just doesn't smell right. And nothing about this smells wrong in terms of the process or something, bad. Mr. Rosendahl said it, though. They want this to work. So we could be the 3rd or the 4th or the 10th or the 20th to do this, but it's not a brand new platform. It's not something scary. We all use this every single day. Talk to your own staff members, other people. It is a trusted and true platform. I wish parts of it were better. I wish the Google apps were a little more robust than they are today, but they work. And I think it does more for collaboration than the other thing. One example, I shared this with a couple people. Right now, the way we have our Orange in-house, we get threaded messages. So we send something out to every member of our staff, and 20 people send reply all, and then they say, yeah, that was funny, or here's my input. And we get like 70 emails in our inbox, one after the next. Google and Gmail threads that, so you just have one. and you can read all 70 responses to that, but it doesn't clutter your inbox to go to the next piece of business of having to go delete, delete, delete. There are other folks that can do that. I know Microsoft has a threading option. I know they're looking at that. But what we have before us is the option to actually move today and do something that ensures the money that we budgeted into this budget will be saved, that is better for collaboration, that I think is better for the public option, and I don't want that to be lost. What we can do with the community on this, of collaborating with our own community members, is much more robust and strong in this than staying and trying to do this through what we have today. And I'd hate for us to be the LA that talks everything to death, that comes in here, kills it through, I know we've had a long discussion today, but not to death yet. We've talked it, close to the graveside, but I think that it's very important for us to take action. And we've had a really good discussion. I think we've addressed those security issues. I think we've addressed the reliability issues. We've addressed the cost-saving issues. Now it's whether or not we have the courage to act.
Mr. Wesson for the first time.
Move the previous question.
Whoa. There's three other speakers, Mr. Parks, Mr. Alarcon, Ms. Perry. There is calling the question. Any objection to calling the question? No objection? Okay, so we're going to now call the question. Mr. Clerk, we have some amendments on the table.
Yes, Mr. President. The last motion made was actually a substitute motion. So the first question would be whether to substitute the Koretz-Parks motion.
Now, there were two parts of that.
Part of Mr. Koretz, I didn't hear anybody object to. You could ask. I think that would be folded in as a friendly. And then the second part, I think, would be a vote.
That was a 6-month trial.
Yeah, that's the second part. The first
so we
part
want to do that in two votes? Colleagues?
I don't know if you want to re-articulate it, but it's the
Mr. Koretz?
Liquid damages.
Yeah, the first proposed amendment was to require our staff to go back and negotiate liquidated damages into the contract, which initially the company had refused to do.
So on that matter,
if there's no objection, ask if there's
no objection from the floor. Mr. Weezer?
Point of clarification, is that a condition upon our approval, or is just a request to our staff to go negotiate that? It doesn't mean it's going to happen.
Mr. Koretz?
I am asking that that be a condition of our approval.
Okay, so I just want to make that clear. The motion is that this will not be approved unless they agree to liquidated damages, which we are not in a position here to negotiate with them, and I don't think this is the best way to negotiate a contract.
Ms. Perry?
I just want to clarify that. That's what the motion is. If we
that is the motion. Ms. Perry, do you have a question on that?
Yeah, I just want to clarify some of Mr. Koretz's amendments I liked, and I would like to see them broken out so I could vote affirmatively on that, because I feel like if you roll them all into the primary issue, then it gets confusing as to what we actually voted for. I like his idea of a
Hold on one second. I think, Mr. President, if I may, we're able to ask clarifying questions about splitting, but you can't begin to express your opinion about, since we called the previous question, about how you'd vote or what you'd like.
So, Mr. Koretz, on the first item, the liquidated damages, which would be part of the contract.
Yes.
Okay, that matter is now before us. Open the roll.
Mr. President?
Pardon me?
I'm going to request to speak on this motion.
On this particular motion? Go ahead.
Colleagues, I support the liquidated damages. In fact, it was...
We can't speak on the substance. Yeah. Not on what we call the previous question. So we can't speak on the substance. We can clarify, whether they're going to be split, what he said, but we can't express our opinions anymore on the topic, because we called the previous question. No more debate is allowed.
On the original motion, and we cannot speak on any amendment?
No. Not on the substance of it. You can clarify the substance, but you can't say, I'd like to see this, or I want to vote that way.
I'll clarify it.
Okay.
Colleagues, from what I understand Mr. Koretz is proposing is that we would not approve this contract unless there are liquidated damages. We should postpone this vote if, in fact, we're going to do that, because then we need them to come back.
We can't do that second piece. That's getting into
This is not the way to vote upon this.
Well, that's what's before us. The amendment and the first part is the liquidated damage as part of the contract, which will be taken back to Google. On that matter, open the roll. Mr. Garcetti? We're voting on the amendment.
So it sounds like there's an objection to that. Let's just keep this really clear, guys. It sounds like there's an objection to doing that just as a friendly amendment. Some people might have. So we have to vote on each aspect of Mr. Koretz's motion. So
And the first part is
is whether or not to make it, and he clarified that he was mandating that the contract only go forward if it had that added to it. People may have different opinions on that, but now you have the opportunity to say, yes, I agree with that, or no, I don't.
Ms. Perry?
Pressed my button prematurely because I didn't realize we were going to separate it, so clear out my board so I can re-vote.
So for clarification, we're going to vote on the First Amendment, which is the liquidated damages, as part of the contract. Open the roll, close the roll, tabulate the vote.
9 ayes, 3 noes.
That passes. And the next item?
So next we take up Mr. Kretz's motion on the 6-month pilot and upgrading Novell. As a substitute.
Ms. Hahn, clarification?
Yes. Point of clarification. If in fact they cannot negotiate that, does it come back to us then, and we have an opportunity to vote on it again without this piece, without the liquidation?
That's the city attorney. I don't know.
Or is it just goes away and?
Mr. City Attorney?
The vote that we just took said we would only approve the contract if it had in it
Liquidated damage.
liquidated damage. Yeah. So if it doesn't have that piece in it, what happens?
If it's a vote to approve the contract, that's conditional upon the inclusion of a liquidated damage, and let's just be clear that it's liquidated damage relating to security breach,
right.
not for system downtime, and that condition isn't met,
Right.
then you have not approved the contract.
Okay, and then what happens?
Well, but then you haven't disapproved the contract either.
So what happens?
Your 60-day clock is running. If you have 60 days to act on the contract.
Okay.
If the contract is neither approved nor disapproved,
So someone could bring it back before us?
it would have to come back to you before the 60 days expired. Else, by operation of law, the contract would be deemed approved.
Okay.
Mr. Garcetti, do you have an update for us? No? All right, Mr. Labange, you have a question on this matter?
I have a question to the CAO. Do other contracts have this same concept?
Well, this is a point of clarification, as I understand.
Point of clarification. Do other contracts, Mr. City Attorney, have that?
Well, you can get your turn, but we've only gotten the first part. Mr. Labange is out of order.
Well, I want the president to say it, not the great councilman
Well,
from
what
the
I'm trying
7th
to
district.
do, what I'm trying to do
He only
is
said it afterwards.
sort through this. Mr. Clerk, we have the first vote. Now we have a second issue, and we have questions regarding it. Mr. Koretz, on your motions, do you have some clarification for us?
No, it sounded like people wanted to split up the two pieces.
We have split it. We have split it. Mr. Garcetti is going to liberate us now.
The pieces of
with
my
some
motion?
greater insight.
We have in order Mr. Koretz's substitute motion comes next. His substitute motion was not, we've just amended the other one. Should this substitute motion not pass, that will be taken up after that, Mr. Cardenas's motion, as amended by Mr. Koretz. Okay? That clear to folks? Are there any procedural questions, Mr. Alcon, to deal with? All right. Okay. So now this is Mr. Koretz's motion, which specifies a 6-month pilot in a single department and an upgrade to Novell group-wise 8. Is everybody clear on
And
that?
I believe there was a last piece to include the liquidated damages clause.
No, we took that piece and we just voted on that separately. That wasn't to that motion, right? Because it's not relevant unless we have a Gmail contract, correct?
I think that's probably correct.
Okay. So that will be an amendment. Yes, Mr. Parks?
I just want to clarify, it would appear that Mr. Koretz's second motion is also calling to cancel the contract, because if he's saying upgrade the system, and then he's saying in addition to upgrade, go to a pilot, this contract
I think as
doesn't
I clarified, he said, were it to move forward, the Gmail, so he did a kind of protective one first, it should be amended to make sure there's liquidated damages. But his preference was to do something else, which he moved as a substitute motion. If that passes, that first piece is irrelevant, because there's no longer the recommended contract.
But my understanding, if I understand what he said, is that if you move forward on upgrading the system, do you then continue to talk about the current contract And if he's saying a 6-month pilot, that's not part of the contract.
Correct.
So the issue is, if we vote on his second motion, then where does that put us? Does that put us with canceling the contract? Does it put us to where we're...
Would you like to clarify, Mr. Kretz? Was it in place of moving the contract
I think
forward?
you would have to cancel the contract, which has time running on it. Otherwise, it would inadvertently go into effect as it's being proposed.
Okay. Mr. Alarcon?
The so-called friendly amendment by Mr. Koretz is actually contradictive of the original motion. Therefore, it is a motion on its own. It's separate and apart from the first motion.
Correct. He has a substitute.
It's a substitute motion. It is not a friendly amendment.
No, Mr. Kretz, it was not accepted as a friendly amendment, correct? That's why we had a vote on it. It was not accepted as friendly. That's correct. Okay, so I think we are in agreement that, and Mr. Koretz is clarifying that was cancel this contract, but instead try to negotiate a 6-month, one department pilot plus the second part. Correct? Okay. All right, that's what the vote is right now, okay? So please open the roll, close the roll, and tabulate the vote.
3 ayes, 9 noes.
Okay, that fails. Now we have Mr. Cardenas's motion, which includes Mr. Koretz's modification as well. Okay, Mr. Koretz's motion, okay, that was a joke, huh? Yes, Mr.
I want to just clarify, should they say no to liquidated damages, this is going to come back when? When are we going to be back at the table? We need to be notified. We cannot just let this expire in 60 days.
For what it's worth, as a point of information as well, Mr. Weezer, for what's worth, the representatives of, it's not Google, by the way, that would be held for those damages, it's CSC, which is the vendor implementing it, believed that they would have no problem with that, so it probably shouldn't be an issue.
Okay, because after Budget and Finance, we
As a
did
point
ask...
of, sorry, one last thing, I'm sorry, Mr. Weezer, to interrupt. As a point of information, though, Google did point out to it that we have unlimited damages right now. That would potentially constrain our damages to something we'd have to negotiate less than unlimited, just as an FYI.
Because after Budget and Finance, we did make that request. We were told that they did not agree to those liquidated damages, and so if things have changed, we should have been told that things had changed, because we did make that request after Budget and Finance. That's a point of information, and the response to us was no. So I'm just concerned, and I'm asking the question as a point of information. Should they say no again, our staff is going to come back to us and tell us what and through what committee.
I think that should be, I think I would like to have an amendment to this amendment to say just that.
We can't make any more, I'm sorry.
You can't?
We can't. We've called the question, folks. We can suspend the rules and go back to debate, but we can't debate, we can't make any new motions. That's what calling the question is. It's calling the question.
Because it doesn't necessarily come back.
We will-
It doesn't come back. You have to ask for it to come back.
If this does not get affirmative votes today, this stays here, folks. If it gets affirmative votes, Mr. Cardenas has put forward something that then would require negotiation, which for what it's worth is, I think, a moot question as a point of information, because it seems like that is no problem for the contractor. Okay? So it was a good thing to add. Mr. Kretz added it, unless it actually constrains our damages, but we'll get back to that. I'm sure they'd be willing to unroll that if it were the case too. Okay? So, Mr. Cardenas, do you want to reread your motion, or the City Clerk, did you follow it all?
So somebody needs to pay.
It was to note and file, I believe.
Yes, Mr. President. The recommendations made and the motion made by Mr. Cardenas was to, 1, receive and file the ITGS report dated August 2009, 2, to receive and file the October 7th Budget and Finance Committee report, 3, to note and file item 21, and then the fourth part was to approve the recommendations as contained in the CAO report.
And amendment of Mr. Kretz.
With the amendment. And there was also an additional instruction to have CLA, ITA, CAO, City Attorney, and LAPD report back to the ITGA Committee with a monthly status update relative within 45 days.
Okay. The Kretz amendment was the liquid damages that they are held accountable for, that we asked them to negotiate that, and that be predicated on that. It was defeated. There was a substitute motion that was defeated. Okay, please open the roll.
Also, excuse me, the City Clerk forgot one last portion of my motion, which is to instruct the CLA, ITA, and CAO and City Attorney to finalize the contract and agree upon the language specifically referring to the 30-day right to cancel, because there's a little bit of debate there. Okay,
Mr.
thank
Parks?
you.
I'd like to offer to Tony a mini motion, which is a...
We can't, unfortunately.
I'm sorry, a friendly amendment.
Even a friendly one, it's out of
Can't
order.
do it?
It's out of order. Once we call the question...
I thought they would treat me better.
Just to restate, unfortunately, no.
We have a housekeeping issue about the contract that we're trying to get the CAO and the CLA involved in the
We
implementation.
have to move to suspend the rules to do that.
Yeah, it's a housekeeping. It has nothing to do with changing it.
I'm just a parliamentarian here letting you know what the procedure is. We can't make the motion, you have to suspend the rules to do that.
We'll move to suspend the rules.
Okay.
And we can add
The
just
second,
amendment.
please open the roll on suspending the rules. Close the rules. Close the roll and tabulate the vote.
12 ayes.
They're council rules and Robert's rules.
Okay.
All right, now those rules have been suspended. You'd like to make the motion,
This is
Mr.
a
Parks?
friendly amendment that in the current contract, it requires a pilot program. And that the amendment would be that the city would be paid, that there be payment made at the conclusion of the pilot program for the implementation plan, and that the CLA, CAO, and ITA be a part of developing the implementation plan.
Actually,
Wait, I'm sorry. Wait, hold on, Mr. Labange, you're not in order. You were moving to change it to a pilot program?
No. It's a pilot program in the contract for about 3 months. It's in the contract about them doing a pilot program.
We have a pilot.
Yeah,
We
it's
have
in
a
there.
pilot in the contract.
Okay, and on that, it was to report back on that, Mr. Parks?
All I'm saying is that there's a payment plan that is after the implementation plan, and we're saying it should be paid in advance, and also that the CLA, the ITA, and CAO should be part of developing the implementation plan. So there's a pilot there. We're just saying the payment should be advanced, and that the implementation plan should be developed in conjunction with our our CLA, CAO, and ITA.
So, I'm sorry, so this is a substantive, it's not housekeeping in the sense
No,
of...
it's just a friendly amendment to add for clarity as to payment and clarity as to their participation in the implementation planning.
What's the CAO think of it?
Is there an objection to this as a friendly amendment, first of all?
I object because I'm not exactly sure what the effect of it is.
Mr. Cardenas, if I can perhaps comment, I think what he's referring to is there is actually a payment schedule within the contract, and there's certain parameters or certain targets of 20% payment after a certain point, 20% after another point. The first 20% payment refers to an implementation plan, and that implementation plan I don't think has been developed yet. No one has seen it, and it's unclear as to who is actually going to be approving it. I think Mr. Parks is suggesting that certain people be involved with regard to the development of that implementation plan.
Okay, so it doesn't change it in substance, it just tightens up the aspect of clarity.
That's
clarity as to payment and clarity as to who's involved.
Yes, Mr. President. Now I understand that's...
It's okay? Okay. That's accepted. Thank you, Mr. Parks. Thank you, Mr. Cardenas, as a friendly amendment. With that, let's open the roll. Close the roll and tabulate the vote.
12 ayes.
That passes unanimously. And Mr. Cardenas, did you want to send that forthwith?
Forthwith, absolutely.
I'll send that forthwith to the mayor. Thank you all very much. We'll go to the next order of business, please. Or next item, excuse me.
Item 19, called special for cards.
Item 19 is next. Dr. Clyde Williams is our first speaker on item 19. If we could clear out the center aisles, please, so we can hear the public comment for the next one. Thank you, Dr. Williams. If I can ask... Please, Dr. Williams, I'm sorry. We're trying to get our...
My wife and I do this every night. She's an MBA by Oracle Financials database administrator for State Fund.
Good
State
stuff.
Fund is even in worse condition.
All right. Go ahead. We can hear you, and we're watching. Thank you.
Okay. Item. Here we go again. A majority of the bonds for the years 2009-10 and 10-11 are just $1.57 billion, which will be a total cost of around almost $3 billion at the end of 30 years for us. That is, assuming that they maintain their AAA and AA rating and that they get an ECAF that's appropriate to maintaining the AA rating. No impact on the general fund from the power revenue. That's strange because it's been accepted 8% goes to general fund. Therefore, it would be nice to see what the total costs on these bonds are. That is, including operations and maintenance, say at 10%. Say 2% for capital replacement, or maybe the transformers will last longer. And how about 8% to the general fund from the net surplus revenue of the power budget? All of these costs are not included and not referenced. So, oh, by the way, in the bond, in the water section, they have a bond insurance fee. Don't the power bonds get a insurance fee also? So the application as it's presented has impact upon the general fund and thereby should be rejected as is until they demonstrate what the general fund impacts will be. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Arnold Sachs. Mr. Sachs here? Don't see him. And Matt Dowd? Not see him either. Okay. Close the public hearing. Any members wishing to be heard on this? Mr. Cardenas.
DWP staff, we're on the 19, which is the power portion. Mr. Freeman, did you want to?
We're going to hold your time, Mr. Cardenas. Hold your time.
Now, on item number 19, there is currently a recommendation pending that hasn't gone before the board of DWP yet, and the recommendation that the lead underwriters or the senior underwriters should be J.P. Morgan and Morgan Stanley. Are either one of those firms a California-based firm?
No, sir, but...
To the best of our knowledge, I'm pretty sure they're not California-based. But
that's correct.
The fact of the matter is, you do have an underwriting pool that does have California-based firms in it, right?
That's correct, yes,
Okay.
sir.
And it's my understanding that as of late, in the last 4 years or so, the city, the proprietary departments have used more than in the past California-based firms, and it appears, in my understanding, that we've been pretty happy with both the non-California-based firms and the California-based firms and their performance, correct?
Yeah, we're very proud that we've gotten local and minority participation, and we're doing at least as well, if not better.
Okay, I just want to clarify for the record, I, as a council member, as a policymaker, am not using the term minority, nor am I referring to minorities. I'm referring to California-based firms.
Yes.
What happens in the city charter is the city charter, when it talks about contracting, et cetera, it does in fact refer to California-based firms and local firms such as county firms. I don't know why it doesn't say city, but county-based firms. So basically saying local businesses. So my point is, the recommendation that's going to go before the board, is there any way in which the staff can find a California-based firm that is qualified, that is currently on your pool, that you do have satisfaction with, et cetera, that could be included as one of the senior leads on this, like you've done in the past, and like you're going to explain to us on 20 when we get to it, that you're including them on 20? Yes?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So, how and when could we confirm that with you?
We've confirmed among ourselves this morning, and we're going to add the Siebert Branford Shank and Company, LLC, to the group on the power bond.
Okay, so it'll be 3 firms, I presume, that was, okay, senior lead this deal. I just wanted to clarify that. I'm assuming that it was it doesn't seem like a big deal or what have you, but it may have been an oversight or what have you, because you've been extremely consistent over the last few years, and including California-based firms and your senior lead deals. And I'd also like to remind all of us is that to date, we haven't had any issues to cause anybody any concern. The performance of the out-of-state firms and the in-state firms have all been pretty darn good and pretty equal for all intent and purpose, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Well, thank you for that clarification, and that was something that I had shared with Bernard Parks. I wasn't ready to move forward with this until we got some kind of clarity, but it appears that we have the head of the department who took the time and energy to convene with his staff, and they've clarified that. So thank you very much, members. It looks good to me. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Cardenas. No other speakers. Open the roll, close the roll, tabulate the vote.
12 eyes.
Very well. Next item, please.
Item 20, called special for cards.
Number 20. Dr. Williams. Dr. Clyde Williams has left the building. Matt Dowd left the building. Matters now before us. Mr. Cardenas, excuse me, Mr. Cardenas.
Thank you very much. This one might be a little quicker and simpler. I just wanted to point out that, as a matter of fact, the last item we talked about was giving permission to put out $1.57 billion in bonds over the coming months. This one has to do with the water side. It's $980 million, and it might go out as soon as November, which is right around the corner. So thank you very much for doing all the diligent work there. It looks as though you have a pretty robust pool of underwriters and senior underwriters, both local and out of state. So I just wanted to congratulate you on that. It's wonderful to see that. The participation of local firms across the board, especially with DWP, you've been taking the lead on making sure that we have a nice, robust mix, unlike we had 10 years ago, et cetera. And I must say, members, I've talked to many firms since I got on the council 6 years ago, and a lot of them were just not wanting to bid because they felt as though they weren't getting the attention that they deserve to be able to compete. It's a different world today. So I just want to thank you and congratulate you for being consistent on this item 20.
Could I just add that we're also doing a pretty good job on this issue down at the port?
Yes, that's right. The port, you guys are right behind them, not lagging. I won't use the term lagging. The port doesn't put out as many bonds as the Department of Water and Power. The Department of Water and Power has put out much more, many more occurrences of bonds, so they've had more opportunities to actually exercise this new paradigm. So thank you very much, former president of the board at the Water and Power, excuse me, at the port. Thank you very much. Thank you, members.
Matters now before us. Open the roll, close the roll, tabulate the vote.
12 eyes.
Next item, please.
Item 22, called special for cards.
Dr. Williams, not here. Arnold Sachs, not here. Matt Dowd, not here. And Donna Pierman in the Valley. Is Donna Pierman in the Valley available? To the San Fernando Valley? She's not there? Okay. That matter is now before us. Open the roll. Close the roll. Tabulate the vote.
12 eyes.
Next item, please.
Item 26, called special by Councilmember Weezer, and there are cards on that.
Councilmember Weezer, we have cards from Arnold Sachs, who's not here, and Matt Dowd, who's not here. Councilmember Weezer.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, I just wanted to bring to everyone's attention this item, which marks today, or this month actually, if I could get my notes here, the National Community Planning Month throughout the United States of America. I've submitted this motion along with Councilmember Ed Reyes, the chair of Plum, and the reason we wanted to highlight this in Los Angeles is because we have a number of ways that we're asking residents to get more involved in the planning of their communities. We currently have the planning commissions, the area planning commissions, neighborhood councils, but in order for us to prevent types of uses in our communities that we do not want, it's better to be involved up front rather than when it's too late. Your local planning agencies have information about this. We'd ask our planning department to circulate this information in the area planning commissions and neighborhood councils as well. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Weezer. That matter is before us. Open the roll, close the roll, and tabulate the vote.
12 ayes.
Very well. Mr. Clerk.
Mr. President, there is a special one, and the city attorney will speak to the findings.
It's a special one, Mr. City Attorney.
Thank you, Mr. President. Since the posting of today's agenda, the Bureaus of Engineering and Sanitation determined that immediate repair of damaged laterals related to city repairs at 5163 and 5167 Franklin Avenue are needed. Immediate action is required of the Board of Public Works to declare the site an emergency and expeditiously complete the repairs. Council must first make findings pursuant to Government Code Section 54954.2 before considering the substantive motion.
Very well. Mr. LaBonge.
Just to let you know, the city rebuilt the walls, but in the process, cut off the access to the sewers. Action was taken by our Board of Public Works today. Thank the chairman of the committee. Ask for an aye vote.
Mr. Rosendahl.
1920 forthwith on those two items.
19 and 20?
Forthwith.
Forthwith. Mr. Clerk, 1920 forthwith. On the findings, no questions. On the matter before us, open the roll, close the roll, tabulate the vote.
12 ayes.
Forthwith on that matter, please.
Mr. President, you would now take a vote on the item itself.
On the item, open the roll, close the roll, tabulate the vote.
12 ayes.
Very well. Next item, please.
There is a special two, and the city attorney will speak to those findings.
Special two, Mr. City Attorney.
Thank you, Mr. President. This past Friday, Metro staff informed city staff of an extension of time for the city to provide additional comments regarding the city's official position on light rail transit project design options. Immediate action is required to instruct the clerk to place the motion detailing the comments on a continuation agenda for tomorrow. Council must first make findings pursuant to Government Code Section 54954.2 before considering the substantive motion.
Very well. On the findings, open the roll, close the roll, tabulate the vote.
12 ayes.
On the matter before us, anyone wish to speak?
And Mr. President, I believe
Mr. Parks? Scheduled for tomorrow?
Yeah, on the substance, yes.
Very well. On the matter, open the roll, close the roll.
No vote is necessary, Mr. President.
All right. Then we won't vote on it. Next item.
Council has motions for posting and referral.
Posted and referred, please.
The desk is clear.
Very well. Announcements of Mr. Garcetti. Mr. Alarcon.
I just want to announce that the Jobs and Business Retention Committee is scheduled for 1 o'clock. Will begin as soon as this meeting ends, approximately 5 minutes later. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Garcetti.
Thank you. Colleagues, tomorrow and Thursday in Council District 9, the Convention Center, is the 8th annual Cash for College Career Convention. It's the College and Career Convention. It's the largest now in the country that we have. And I just wanted to give you guys some statistics about your own districts of how many students are going to be there. From CD1, there's 1,150 students. Council District 3, Mr. Zine, you have 400 students. Mr. LaBonge, you're going to have 300 students there at the Convention Center. Mr. Kretz will have 100. Mr. Cardenas will have 400. Mr. Alarcon, 500. Mr. Parks, you have 500 of your students that will be there. Ms. Perry has 1,200 students that will be there. Go CD9. Mr. Weston has 500. Mr. Rosendahl, you have 400 students. I'll have 1,100. Mr. Weezer, 800. And Council District 15 will have 900 students. This is the one opportunity that every LAUSD kid has to learn about college and make sure it's a good thing, that there's money out there for them. And David Rattray is here who runs it. I think most of you know David. We are helping out by sponsoring. The city has done that in the past, but I encourage you, there's no better bang for the buck if you have a little bit of discretionary money to give something to help those students be there, have lunch, learn about college, and get scholarships. It is, like I said, the largest college scholarship fair now in the country. They're going to go through presentations on financial aid, learn about different colleges, so make sure your community members know about this. Any young people who are watching, it's tomorrow at the Convention Center from 8:30 to 1, and then Thursday 8:30 to 1, and then there's family night from 5:30 to 9 about helping families prepare for college as well. So I'll go around and follow up, but any little bits and pieces of money, it's a great idea, a great thing, and we really appreciate your hard work, David, and we look forward to supporting many more years of getting LA kids into college. Thanks.
And it's free admission, no charge.
That is correct.
So we
In fact, you make money. There's scholarships you can win just by going.
So we encourage our students to go to that event. Mr. Parks.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just would like to advise the public with Halloween coming up that we encourage them to have their kids go to the formalized events at Rec and Park facilities, at fire stations and police stations, rather than wandering the streets where we often read about them the next day, having been victimized. But they can go on 311, find out the location of their nearest park, find out what time the programs, and be able to use the city's facilities for the safety of their kids on Halloween.
Great reminder. Thank you, Mr. Parks. Any other announcements? Adjourning motions? All please stand for adjourning motions. Mr. Labange? Please
Mr.
stand.
Garcetti and I will ask us all to adjourn in memory of a very special young man.
Thank you, and Mr. Labange just passed this on to me, but we had learned of it as well, and I really appreciate co-presenting this with him. But it's very sad. Hollywood High School is mourning the loss of a freshman football player in a game between Hollywood High School and West Adams Prep. It ended abruptly when Spencer Juarez collapsed on the sidelines with just 2 minutes of play left. The game was halted. Paramedics were called to transport the team to Children's Hospital, and Spencer had just taken a hit and was jogging back to the sidelines, and he fell over and unfortunately died. He was an extremely humble person, a freshman at Hollywood High, a dedicated athlete who also did well in school. We'll get some more information about the family and about him, but certainly is a loss for the entire Chic community as well as for LAUSD and for this entire city. So Mr. Labange and I would like to adjourn in his memory. I appreciate, too, that folks already adjourned for Jamin Amato. He was an intern with us. Many of you know his parents, the Amatos, who are educators in Los Angeles, but this young man who valiantly fought his sickness with brain cancer, and he was laid to rest this past Tuesday at much too young of an age. A football player at Boston College, somebody who gave to the city of LA in an incredible summer when he rode in our winning team on Echo Park Lake for the Lotus Festival. He was somebody who did almost anything we gave to him, a brilliant, brilliant young man taken too early, and I appreciate that we adjourned in his memory. And then lastly, Sister Peg Dolan, I ask that we also adjourn for after her courageous battle with cancer. She passed away on October 6th. It's with a very heavy heart that I pass on that she was known as an alumni chaplain. So few people are identified with the place as Sister Peg is, and she and her work at Loyola Marymount University, she was really the heart of LMU, a vibrant link to Marymount's past, and an extraordinary member of the community. The campus ministry there is named after Sister Peg, but that was simply putting a name on what we all knew already, that she had embraced the campus and everyone in it. Margaret Mary Peg Dolan was born and raised in the Bronx, New York, after her parents came to the United States from Ireland. She graduated from high school in 1952 and then entered the Order of the Religious Sacred Heart of Mary, an international community of women who serve in 15 countries. She earned her bachelor's degree from Marymount College, her master's degree from Loyola Marymount University, and her second master's in applied spirituality from the University of San Francisco. She was a dedicated teacher throughout the 70s, and her humanitarian efforts were second to none. The Catholic Charities named her as Honoree of the Year in 2001 for her work in parishes, to schools, social services, and her dedication to the poor. She was Woman of the Year for the Santa Monica Westside YMCA, and she had many, many, many awards. She once said, as the LMU commencement speaker in 2008, she told the graduates there, "Dream big, big enough to fulfill God's dream for you." And she had a closed casket visitation last Friday at Sacred Heart Chapel, and a prayer vigil that followed, and then she was laid to rest on Saturday. In lieu of flowers, donations can be made to the Religious Order of the Sacred Heart of Mary, to Loyola Marymount University, or to the RSHM Gail Hack Pastoral Leadership Scholarship, or to the Sister Peg Dolan Campus Ministry. There is a place also online for folks to share their memories of Sister Peg at the Alumni Relations website at alumni.lmu.edu. That all may have life was the motto of her order. She will always be a part of our life and a huge part of our legacy. We've been fortunate to know a saint.
Can I ask that we, Mr. Rosendahl and myself second that as well? Thank you.
Ms. Hahn.
Thank you. Colleagues, I'd like to adjourn the memory of Larry Howard, who passed away on October 12th. He was only 50. Larry was the brother of Fullerton City Councilwoman and former Mayor Sharon Quirk Silva. Larry grew up in Fullerton and graduated from high school in 1977. And at age 10, he discovered surfing, which would lead to a 40-year passion for the sport. He served in the U.S. Coast Guard, specializing in firefighting and ship maintenance. And he ultimately worked for and retired from Abbott Laboratories in Temecula. He's survived by his mother, Josephine, and 9 siblings, Sharon, Cindy, Susie, Karen, Lynette, Ricky, Billy, John, and Mark. I know Sharon through my work at SCAG. Some of you might know her. And she was asked to run for a higher office recently, and she declined because she was so concerned about her brother's health. She was really a great sister till the end. I want to adjourn also in the memory of Kenneth Pendergrass, who passed away recently. He was a 45-year resident of San Pedro. He served in the U.S. Navy for 21 years and was a longshoreman with ILW 13 for many years. He was a very proud community member and got involved in so many local events. In fact, he and his wife Carol loaned us their car to use for some of our holiday parades, and they drove me twice in the Wilmington Harbor Holiday Parade. He's survived by his wife Carol, his daughter Deborah May Pendergrass, brothers Glenn, John, and Leon, and sister Ida. Donations may be made to Kenneth's name at your local VFW. One more, I'd like us to adjourn the memory of James Lewis Swinton, who died September 24th at the age of 63. He was born in Alabama, but moved to California after serving in the U.S. Army. He received his AA degree from Southwest College. He was a dedicated, faithful member of the Normandy Church of Christ. He is survived by 5 children, 14 siblings, 23 nieces and nephews, including his dear sister, Miss Catherine Walker, of the 135th Street Neighborhood Watch Association. I know he'll be missed.
Mr. Weezer?
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues ask that we adjourn the memory of Dom Chambra, a former LUSD employee. He died of congestive heart failure this last Monday at Huntington Hospital in Pasadena. He was a very skilled, no-nonsense teacher and principal. He rose out of a tight-knit East LA educator network to take on increasingly challenging roles, especially in the 1990s, while working with Bill Anton, the district's superintendent. He was also a champion of the Belmont Learning Complex, a complex that was under a lot of controversy to relieve the severe overcrowding in the Pico Union area of downtown Los Angeles. Thankfully, after a lot of work, the school district finally opened up a new facility this past year. It's now called the Edward R. Roybal Learning Complex. Dominic Chambra was born January 2nd, 1939 in Alhambra to Italian immigrant parents. He graduated from Wilson High School and worked as a playground supervisor while earning bachelor's and master's degrees in education at Cal State LA. Mr. Chambra served as an elected member of the San Gabriel Unified School Board for 20 years, starting in 1973. By the early 1980s, Chambra had marked himself as an administrator who handled tough jobs. When enrollment declined sharply in the West Side and the San Fernando Valley, he managed the unpopular task of closing 22 schools. Later that decade, behind the scenes, Chambra helped battle developer Donald Trump to draw over control of the Ambassador Hotel site, where we just opened up 2 new schools and 3 more are scheduled to open. With the Ambassador project stalled, Chambra's team turned to Belmont. He became the face of the project in a nearly 2-decade saga that led to local political upheaval as well as wholesale changes in environmental reviews for all schools throughout the state of California. In addition to his son Dominic, Jr., Chambra is survived by sons James and Nick, 2 grandchildren, and his longtime companion, Betty Hansen. His wife, Kathleen, died in 1996. Services were held Monday at the Holy Family Church in South Pasadena. Instead of flowers, the family has requested donations to the American Educators of Italian Origin United in Los Angeles.
Thank you, Mr. Weezer. Second by Mr. LeBon. This concludes this meeting of the City Council.